Paul felt that all his past, every experience before this night, had become sand, curling in an hourglass. He sat near his mother, hugging his knees within a small fabric and plastic hutment, a still tent that had come, like the Fremen clothing they now wore, from a pack left in the Thopter. There was no doubt in Paul's mind who had put the Fremkit there, who had directed the course of the Thopter carrying them captive. Yui. The traitor doctor had sent them directly into the hands of Duncan Idaho. Paul stared out the transparent end of the still tent at the moon-shadowed rocks that ringed this place where Idaho had hidden them. Hidden like a child when I'm now the Duke, Paul thought. He felt the thought gall him, but he could not deny the wisdom in what they did. Something had happened to his awareness this night. He saw with sharpened clarity every circumstance and occurrence around him. He felt unable to stop the inflow of data or the cold precision with which each new item was added to his knowledge, and the computation was centered in his awareness. It was Mentat power and more. Paul thought back to the moment of impotent rage as the strange Thopter dived out of the night onto them, swooping like a giant hawk above the desert with wind screaming through its wings.
Ozzy and Snoopy.
The thing in Paul's mind had happened then. The Thopter had skidded and slewed across a sand ridge toward the running figures, his mother and himself. Paul remembered how the smell of burned sulfur from abrasion of Thopter skids against sand had drifted across them. His mother, he knew, had turned, expected to meet a lasgun in the hands of Harkonnen mercenaries, and had recognized Duncan Idaho leaning out the Thopter's open door, shouting, "Hurry! There's worm sign south of you!" But Paul had known as he turned who piloted the Thopter. An accumulation of minutiae in the way it was flown, the dash of the landing, clues so small even his mother hadn't detected them, had told Paul precisely who sat at those controls. Across the still tent from Paul, Jessica stirred, said, "There can be only one explanation. The Harkonnens held Yui's wife. He hated the Harkonnens. I cannot be wrong about that. You read his note. But why has he saved us from the carnage?" She is only now seeing it, and that poorly, Paul thought. The thought was the shock. He had known this fact as a by-the-way thing while reading the note that had accompanied the ducal signet in the pack. "Do not try to forgive me," Yui had written. "I do not want your forgiveness. I already have enough burdens. What I have done was done without malice or hope of another's understanding. It is my own Tahadi al-Burhan, my ultimate test. I give you the Atreides ducal signet as token that I write truly. By the time you read this, Duke Leto will be dead. Take consolation from my assurance that he did not die alone, that one we hate above all others died with him." It had not been addressed or signed, but there'd been no mistaking the familiar scrawl. Yui's. Remembering the letter, Paul re-examined the distress of that moment, a thing sharp and strange that seemed to happen outside his new mental alertness. He had read that his father was dead, known the truth of the words, but had felt them as no more than another datum to be entered in his mind and used. I loved my father, Paul thought, and knew this for truth. I should warn him. I could feel something. But he felt nothing except, here's an important fact. It was one with all the other facts. All the while his mind was adding sense impressions, extrapolating, computing. Halleck's words came back to Paul. "Mood's a thing for cattle or for making love. You fight when a necessity arises, no matter your mood." Perhaps that's it, Paul thought. I'll mourn my father later, when there's time. But he felt no let-up in the cold precision of his being. He sensed that his new awareness was only a beginning, that it was growing. The sense of terrible purpose he'd first experienced in his ordeal with the Reverend Mother Gaia's Helen Mohayim pervaded him. His right hand, the hand of remembered pain, tingled and throbbed. Is this what it is to be the Kwisatz Haderach? He wondered. For a while I thought Howard had failed us again, Jessica said. I thought perhaps Yuri wasn't a Suk doctor. He was everything we thought him, and more, Paul said. And he thought, why is she so slow seeing these things? He said, if Idaho doesn't get through to Kynes, we'll be... He's not our only hope, she said. Such was not my suggestion, he said. She heard the steel in his voice, the sense of command, and stared across the grey darkness of the still tent at him. Paul was a silhouette against moon-frosted rocks, seen through the tent's transparent end. Others among your father's men will have escaped, she said. We must regather them, find... We will depend upon ourselves, he said. Our immediate concern is our family atomics. We must get them before the Harkonnens can search them out. Not likely they'll be found, she said, the way they were hidden. It must not be left to chance. And she thought, blackmail with the family atomics as a threat to the planet and its spice. That's what he has in mind. But all he can hope for then is escape into renegade anonymity. His mother's words had provoked another train of thought in Paul, a duke's concern for all the people they'd lost this night. People are the true strength of a great house, Paul thought. And he remembered Howard's words. Parting with people is a sadness. A place is only a place. They're using Sardaukar, Jessica said. We must wait until the Sardaukar have been withdrawn. They think us caught between the desert and the Sardaukar, Paul said. They intend that there be no Atreides survivors. Total extermination. Do not count on any of our people escaping. They cannot go on indefinitely risking exposure of the Emperor's part in this. Can't they? Some of our people are bound to escape. Are they? Jessica turned away, frightened of the bitter strength in her son's voice, hearing the precise assessment of chances. She sensed that his mind had leaped ahead of her, that it now saw more in some respects than she did. She had helped train the intelligence which did this, but now she found herself fearful of it. Her thoughts turned, seeking toward the lost sanctuary of her duke, and tears burned her eyes. This is the way it had to be later, she thought. A time of love and a time of grief. She rested her hand on her abdomen, awareness focused on the embryo there. I have the Atreides daughter I was ordered to produce. But the Reverend Mother was wrong. A daughter wouldn't have saved my Leto. This child is only life reaching for the future in the midst of death. I conceived out of instinct, not out of obedience. Try the Communinet receiver again, Paul said. The mind goes on working no matter how we try to hold it back, she thought. Jessica found the tiny receiver Idaho had left for them, flipped its switch. A green light glowed on the instrument's face. Tinny screeching came from its speaker. She reduced the volume, hunted across the bands. A voice speaking Atreides' battle language came into the tent. Pack and regroup at the ridge. Fedor reports no survivors in Carthag, and the guild bank has been sacked. Carthag, Jessica thought. That was a Harkonnen hotbed. There's Sardaukar, the voice said. Watch out for Sardaukar in Atreides uniforms. A roaring filled the speaker. Then silence. Try the other bands, Paul said. Do you realize what that means? Jessica asked. I expected it. They want the guild to blame us for destruction of their bank. With the guild against us, we are trapped on Arrakis. Try the other bands. She weighed his words. I expected it. What had happened to him? Slowly, Jessica returned to the instrument. As she moved the band slide, they caught glimpses of violence in the few voices calling out in Atreides' battle language. Fall back! Try to regroup it. Trapped in a cave at... And there was no mistaking the victorious exultation in the Harkonnen gibberish that poured from the other bands. Sharp commands, battle reports. There wasn't enough of it for Jessica to register and break the language, but the tone was obvious. Harkonnen victory. Paul shook the pack beside him, hearing the 2 litre-johns of water gurgle there. He took a deep breath, looked up through the transparent end of the tent at the rock escarpment outlined against the stars. His left hand felt the sphincter seal of the tent's entrance. "It'll be dawn soon," he said. "We can wait through the day for Idaho, but not through another night. In the desert you must travel by night and rest in shade through the day." Remembered law insinuated itself into Jessica's mind. Without a stillsuit, a man sitting in shade on the desert needs 5 liters of water a day to maintain body weight. She felt the slick, soft skin of the stillsuit against her body, thinking how their lives depended on these garments. "If we leave here, Idaho can't find us," she said. "There are ways to make any man talk," he said. "If Idaho hasn't returned by dawn, we must consider the possibility he has been captured. How long do you think he could hold out?" The question required no answer, and she sat in silence. Paul lifted the seal on the pack, pulled out a tiny micro-manual with glow tab and magnifier. Green and orange letters leaped up at him from the pages. Litre-johns, still tent, energy caps, recats, sand snork, binoculars, stillsuit rep kit, Faraday pistol, sync chart, filt plugs, paracompass, maker hooks, thumpers, frem kit, fire pillow. So many things for survival on the desert. Presently he put the manual aside on the tent floor. "Where can we possibly go?" Jessica asked. "My father spoke of desert power," Paul said. "The Harkonnens cannot rule this planet without it. They've never ruled this planet, nor shall they. Not even with 10,000 legions of Sardaukar." "Paul, you can't think that—" "We've all the evidence in our hands," he said. "Right here in this tent. The tent itself, this pack and its contents, these stillsuits. We know the Guild wants a prohibitive price for weather satellites. We know that—" "What have weather satellites got to do with it?" she asked. "They couldn't possibly—" She broke off. Paul sensed the hyper-alertness of his mind reading her reactions, computing on minutiae. "You see it now," he said. "Satellites watch the terrain below. There are things in the deep desert that will not bear frequent inspection." "You're suggesting the Guild itself controls this planet?" She was so slow. "No," he said. "The Fremen. They're paying the Guild for privacy, paying in a coin that's freely available to anyone with desert power. Spice. This is more than a second approximation answer. It's the straight-line computation. Depend on it." "Paul," Jessica said, "you're not a mentat yet. You can't know for sure how—" "I'll never be a mentat," he said. "I'm something else. A freak. Paul, how can you say such— Leave me alone." He turned away from her, looking out into the night. "Why can't I mourn?" he wondered. He felt that every fibre of his being craved this release, but it would be denied him forever. Jessica had never heard such distress in her son's voice. She wanted to reach out to him, hold him, comfort him, help him, but she sensed there was nothing she could do. He had to solve this problem by himself. The glowing tab of the Frem Kit manual between them on the tent floor caught her eye. She lifted it, glanced at the flyleaf, reading, "Manual of the Friendly Desert, the place full of life. Here are the ayat and burhan of life. Believe, and Allah shall never burn you." It reads like the Ajar book, she thought, recalling her studies of the great secrets. Has a manipulator of religions been on Arrakis? Paul lifted the paracompass from the pack, returned it, said, "Think of all these special application Fremen machines. They show unrivaled sophistication. Admit it. The culture that made these things betrays depths no one suspected." Hesitating, still worried by the harshness in his voice, Jessica returned to the book, studied an illustrated constellation from the Arakeen sky. Wadi, the mouse, and noted that the tail pointed north. Paul stared into the tent's darkness at the dimly discerned movements of his mother, revealed by the manual's glow tab. Now is the time to carry out my father's wish, he thought. I must give her his message now, while she has time for grief. Grief would inconvenience us later. And he found himself shocked by precise logic. "Mother," he said. "Yes." She heard the change in his voice, felt coldness in her entrails at the sound. Never had she heard such harsh control. "My father is dead," he said. She searched within herself for the coupling of fact and fact and fact, the Bene Gesserit way of assessing data, and it came to her. The sensation of terrifying loss. Jessica nodded, unable to speak. "My father charged me once," Paul said, "to give you a message if anything happened to him. He feared you might believe he distrusted you." That useless suspicion, she thought. "He wanted you to know he never suspected you," Paul said, and explained the deception, adding, "He wanted you to know he always trusted you completely, always loved you and cherished you. He said he would sooner have mistrusted himself, and he had but one regret, that he never made you his duchess." She brushed the tears coursing down her cheeks, thought, what a stupid waste of the body's water. But she knew this thought for what it was, the attempt to retreat from grief into anger. Leto, my Leto, she thought. What terrible things we do to those we love. With a violent motion she extinguished the little manual's glow tab. Sobs shook her. Paul heard his mother's grief and felt the emptiness within himself. I have no grief, he thought. Why? Why? He felt the inability to grieve as a terrible flaw. A time to get and time to lose, Jessica thought, quoting to herself from the OC Bible. A time to keep and a time to cast away. A time for love and a time to hate. A time of war and a time of peace. Paul's mind had gone on in its chilling precision. He saw the avenues ahead of them on this hostile planet. Without even the safety valve of dreaming, he focused his prescient awareness, seeing it as a computation of most probable futures, but with something more, an edge of mystery, as though his mind dipped into some timeless stratum and sampled the winds of the future. Abruptly, as though he had found a necessary key, Paul's mind climbed another notch in awareness. He felt himself clinging to this new level, clutching at a precarious hold and peering about. It was as though he existed within a globe, with avenues radiating away in all directions. Yet this only approximated the sensation. He remembered once seeing a gauze kerchief blowing in the wind, and now he sensed the future as though it twisted across some surface as undulant and impermanent as that of the wind-blown kerchief. He saw people. He felt the heat and cold of uncounted probabilities. He knew names and places, experienced emotions without number, reviewed data of innumerable unexplored crannies. There was time to probe, and test, and taste, but no time to shape. The thing was a spectrum of possibilities, from the most remote past to the most remote future, from the most probable to the most improbable. He saw his own death in countless ways. He saw new planets, new cultures, people. People. He saw them in such swarms they could not be listed, yet his mind catalogued them. Even the guildsmen. And he thought, the guild, there'd be a way for us, my strangeness accepted as a familiar thing of high value, always with an assured supply of the now necessary spice. But the idea of living out his life in the mind groping ahead through possible futures that guided hurtling spaceships appalled him. It was a way, though, and in meeting the possible future that contained guildsmen, he recognized his own strangeness. I have another kind of sight. I see another kind of terrain. The available paths. The awareness conveyed both reassurance and alarm. So many places on that other kind of terrain dipped or turned out of his sight. As swiftly as it had come, the sensation slipped away from him, and he realized the entire experience had taken the space of a heartbeat. Yet his own personal awareness had been turned over, illuminated in a terrifying way. He stared around him. Night still covered the still tent within its rock-enclosed hideaway. His mother's grief could still be heard. His own lack of grief could still be felt, that hollow place somewhere separated from his mind, which went on in its steady pace, dealing with data, evaluating, computing, submitting answers in something like the Mentat way. And now he saw that he had a wealth of data few such minds ever before had encompassed. But this made the empty place within him no easier to bear. He felt that something must shatter. It was as though a clockwork control for a bomb had been set to ticking within him. It went on about its business no matter what he wanted. It recorded minuscule shadings of difference around him, a slight change in moisture, a fractional fall in temperature, the progress of an insect across their still tent roof, the solemn approach of dawn in the star-lighted patch of sky he could see out the tent's transparent end. The emptiness was unbearable. Knowing how the clockwork had been set in motion made no difference. He could look to his own past and see the start of it, the training, the sharpening of talents, the refined pressures of sophisticated disciplines, even exposure to the OC Bible at a critical moment. And, lastly, the heavy intake of spice. And he could look ahead, the most terrifying direction, to see where it all pointed. I'm a monster, he thought. A freak. No, he said. Then, no, no, no! He found that he was pounding the tent floor with his fists. The implacable part of him recorded this as an interesting emotional datum and fed it into computation. Paul! His mother was beside him, holding his hands, her face a grey blob peering at him. Paul, what's wrong? You, he said. I'm here, Paul, she said. It's all right. What have you done to me? He demanded. In a burst of clarity, she sensed some of the roots in the question, said, I gave birth to you. It was, from instinct as much as her own subtle knowledge, the precisely correct answer to calm him. He felt her hands holding him, focused on the dim outline of her face. Certain gene traces in her facial structure were noted in the new way by his on-flowing mind, the clues added to other data, and a final summation answer put forward. Let go of me, he said. She heard the iron in his voice, obeyed. Do you want to tell me what's wrong, Paul? Did you know what you were doing when you trained me? He asked. There's no more childhood in his voice, she thought. And she said, I hoped the thing any parent hopes, that you'd be superior, different. Different? She heard the bitterness in his tone, said, Paul, you didn't want a son, he said. You wanted a Kwisatz Haderach. You wanted a male Bene Gesserit. She recoiled from his bitterness. But, Paul, did you ever consult my father in this? She spoke gently out of the freshness of her grief. Whatever you are, Paul, heredity is as much your father as me. But not the training, he said. Not the things that awakened the sleeper. Sleeper? It's here. He put a hand to his head and then to his breast. In me. It goes on and on and on and on and Paul! She had heard the hysteria edging his voice. Listen to me, he said. You wanted the Reverend Mother to hear about my dreams. You listen in her place now. I've just had a waking dream. Do you know why? You must calm yourself, she said. If there's the spice, he said. It's in everything here. The air, the soil, the food. The geriatric spice. It's like the truth-sayer drug. It's a poison. She stiffened. His voice lowered, and he repeated, a poison. So subtle, so insidious, so irreversible it won't even kill you unless you stop taking it. We can't leave Arrakis unless we take part of Arrakis with us." The terrifying presence of his voice brooked no dispute. "You and the spice," Paul said. "The spice changes anyone who gets this much of it, but thanks to you, I could bring the change to consciousness. I don't get to leave it in the unconscious where its disturbance can be blanked out. I can see it." "Paul, I see it," he repeated. She heard madness in his voice, didn't know what to do. But he spoke again, and she heard the iron control return to him. "We're trapped here." "We're trapped here," she agreed. And she accepted the truth of his words. No pressure of the Bene Gesserit, no trickery or artifice could pry them completely free from Arrakis. The spice was addictive. Her body had known the fact long before her mind awakened to it. "So here we live out our lives," she thought, "on this hell planet. The place is prepared for us, if we can evade the Harkonnens, and there's no doubt of my course. A brood mare preserving an important bloodline for the Bene Gesserit clan." "I must tell you about my waking dream," Paul said. Now there was fury in his voice. "To be sure you accept what I say, I'll tell you first, I know you will bear a daughter, my sister, here on Arrakis." Jessica placed her hands against the 10th floor, pressed back against the curving fabric wall to still a pang of fear. She knew her pregnancy could not show yet. Only her own Bene Gesserit training had allowed her to read the first, faint signals of her body, to know of the embryo only a few weeks old. "Only to serve," Jessica whispered, clinging to the Bene Gesserit motto. "We exist only to serve." "We'll find a home among the Fremen," Paul said. "Your Missionaria Protectiva has brought us a bolt hole." "They've prepared a way for us in the desert," Jessica told herself. But how can he know the Missionaria Protectiva? She found it increasingly difficult to subdue her terror at the overpowering strangeness in Paul. He studied the dark shadow of her, seeing her fear and every reaction with his new awareness, as though she were outlined in blinding light. A beginning of compassion for her crept over him. "The things that can happen here I cannot begin to tell you," he said. "I cannot even begin to tell myself, although I've seen them. This sense of the future, I seem to have no control over it. The thing just happens. The immediate future, say a year, I can see some of that. A road as broad as our central avenue on Caladan. Some places I don't see, shadowed places, as though it went behind a hill." And again he thought of the surface of a blowing kerchief. "And there are branchings." He fell silent as memory of that seeing filled him. No prescient dream, no experience of his life had quite prepared him for the totality with which the veils had been ripped away to reveal naked time. Recalling the experience, he recognized his own terrible purpose, the pressure of his life spreading outward like an expanding bubble, time retreating before it. Jessica found the tent's glow tab control, activated it. Dim green light drove back the shadows, easing her fear. She looked at Paul's face, his eyes, the inward stare, and she knew where she had seen such a look before, pictured in records of disasters, on the faces of children who experienced starvation or terrible injury. The eyes were like pits, mouth a straight line, cheeks indrawn. It's the look of terrible awareness, she thought, of someone forced to the knowledge of his own mortality. He was indeed no longer a child. The import of his words began to take over in her mind, pushing all else aside. Paul could see ahead, a way of escape for them. "There's a way to evade the Harkonnens." "The Harkonnens," he sneered. "Put those twisted humans out of your mind." He stared at his mother, studying the lines of her face in the light of the glow tab. The lines betrayed her. She said, "You shouldn't refer to people as humans without—" "Don't be so sure you know where to draw the line," he said. "We carry our past with us, and mother mine, there's a thing you don't know, and should. We are Harkonnens." Her mind did a terrifying thing. It blanked out, as though it needed to shut off all sensation. But Paul's voice went on at that implacable pace, dragging her with it. "When next you find a mirror, study your face. Study mine now. The traces are there if you don't blind yourself. Look at my hands, the set of my bones. If none of this convinces you, then take my word for it. I've walked the future. I've looked at a record. I've seen a place. I have all the data. We're Harkonnens." "A renegade branch of the family," she said. "That's it, isn't it? Some Harkonnen cousin who—" "You're the Baron's own daughter," he said, and watched the way she pressed her hands to her mouth. "The Baron sampled many pleasures in his youth, and once permitted himself to be seduced. But it was for the genetic purposes of the Bene Gesserit, by one of you." The way he said "you" struck her like a slap, but it set her mind to working, and she could not deny his words. So many blank ends of meaning in her past reached out now and linked. The daughter the Bene Gesserit wanted. It wasn't to end the old Atreides-Harkonnen feud, but to fix some genetic factor in their lines. What? She groped for an answer. As though he saw inside her mind, Paul said, "They thought they were reaching for me, but I'm not what they expected, and I've arrived before my time. And they don't know it." Jessica pressed her hands to her mouth. "Great Mother, he's the Kwisatz Haderach." She felt exposed and naked before him, realizing then that he saw her with eyes from which little could be hidden, and that, she knew, was the basis of her fear. "You're thinking I'm the Kwisatz Haderach," she said. "Put that out of your mind. I'm something unexpected." I must get the word out to one of the schools, she thought. The mating index may show what has happened. "They won't learn about me until it's too late," he said. She sought to divert him, lowered her hands and said, "We'll find a place among the Fremen." "The Fremen have a saying they credit to Shai Hulud, Old Father Eternity," he said. "They say, be prepared to appreciate what you meet." And he thought, yes, mother mine, among the Fremen. You'll acquire the blue eyes and a callus beside your lovely nose from the filter tube to your still suit. And you'll bear my sister, said Aliyah of the Knife. "If you're not the Kwisatz Haderach," Jessica said, "what?" "You couldn't possibly know," he said. "You won't believe it until you see it." And he thought, I'm a seed. He suddenly saw how fertile was the ground into which he had fallen, and with this realization, the terrible purpose filled him, creeping through the empty place within, threatening to choke him with grief. He had seen two main branchings along the way ahead. In one, he confronted an evil old baron and said, "Hello, grandfather." He thought of that path, and what lay along it sickened him. The other path held long patches of grey obscurity, except for peaks of violence. He had seen a warrior religion there, a fire spreading across the universe with the Atreides green and black banner waving at the head of fanatic legions drunk on spice liquor. Gurney Halleck and a few others of his father's men, a pitiful few, were among them, all marked by the hawk symbol from the shrine of his father's skull. "I can't go that way," he muttered. "That's what the old witches of your schools really want." "I don't understand you, Paul," his mother said. He remained silent, thinking like the seed he was, thinking with the race consciousness he had first experienced as terrible purpose. He found that he no longer could hate the Bene Gesserit, or the Emperor, or even the Harkonnens. They were all caught up in the need of their race to renew its scattered inheritance, to cross and mingle and infuse their bloodlines in a great new pooling of genes, and the race knew only one sure way for this: the ancient way, the tried and certain way that rolled over everything in its path. Jihad. Surely I cannot choose that way, he thought. But he saw again in his mind's eye the shrine of his father's skull, and the violence with the green and black banner waving in its midst. Jessica cleared her throat, worried by his silence. Then the Fremen will give us... He looked up, staring across the green lighted tent at the inbred patrician light of her face. Yes, he said. That's one of the ways. He nodded. Yes. They'll call me Muad'Dib, the one who points the way. Yes, that's what they'll call me. And he closed his eyes, thinking, now, my father, I can mourn you. And he felt the tears coursing down his cheeks. Book 2. Muad'Dib.
When my father, the Padishah Emperor, heard of Duke Leto's death and the manner of it, he went into such a rage as we had never before seen. He blamed my mother and the compact forced on him to place a Bene Gesserit on the throne. He blamed the guild and the evil old baron. He blamed everyone in sight, not excepting even me, for he said I was a witch like all the others. And when I sought to comfort him, saying it was done according to an older law of self-preservation, to which even the most ancient rulers gave allegiance, he sneered at me and asked if I thought him a weakling. I saw then that he had been aroused to this passion not by concern over the dead duke, but by what that death implied for all royalty. As I look back on it, I think there may have been some prescience in my father too, for it is certain that his line and Muad'Dib's shared common ancestry. In my father's house by the Princess Irulan.
Now Harkonnen shall kill Harkonnen, Paul whispered. He had awakened shortly before nightfall, sitting up in the sealed and darkened still tent. As he spoke, he heard the vague stirrings of his mother, where she slept against the tent's opposite wall. Paul glanced at the proximity detector on the floor, studying the dials illuminated in the blackness by phosphor tubes. It should be night soon, his mother said. Why don't you lift the tent shades? Paul realized then that her breathing had been different for some time, that she had lain silent in the darkness until certain he was awake. Lifting the shades wouldn't help, he said. There's been a storm. The tent's covered by sand. I'll dig us out soon. No sign of Duncan yet? None. Paul rubbed absently at the ducal signet on his thumb, and a sudden rage against the very substance of this planet, which had helped kill his father, set him trembling. I heard the storm begin, Jessica said. The undemanding emptiness of her words helped restore some of his calm. His mind focused on the storm as he had seen it begin through the transparent end of their still tent. Cold dribbles of sand crossing the basin, then runnels and tails furrowing the sky. He had looked up to a rock spire, seen it change shape under the blast, becoming a low, cheddar-colored wedge. Sand funneled into their basin had shadowed the sky with dull curry, then blotted out all light as the tent was covered. Tent bows had creaked once as they accepted the pressure, then silence, broken only by the dim bellows wheezing of their sand snorkel pumping air from the surface. Try the receiver again, Jessica said. No use, he said. He found his stillsuit's water tube in its clip at his neck, drew a warm swallow into his mouth, and he thought that here he truly began an Arakeen existence, living on reclaimed moisture from his own breath and body. It was flat and tasteless water, but it soothed his throat. Jessica heard Paul drinking, felt the slickness of her own still suit clinging to her body, but she refused to accept her thirst. To accept it would require awakening fully into the terrible necessities of Arrakis, where they must guard even fractional traces of moisture, hoarding the few drops in the tent's catch pockets, begrudging a breath wasted on the open air. So much easier to drift back down into sleep. But there had been a dream in this day's sleep, and she shivered at the memory of it. She had held dreaming hands beneath sandflow where a name had been written, Duke Leto Atreides. The name had blurred with the sand, and she had moved to restore it, but the first letter filled before the last was begun. The sand would not stop. Her dream became wailing, louder and louder, that ridiculous wailing. Part of her mind had realized the sound was her own voice as a tiny child, little more than a baby. A woman not quite visible to memory was going away. My unknown mother, Jessica thought. The Bene Gesserit who bore me and gave me to the sisters because that's what she was commanded to do. Was she glad to rid herself of a Harkonnen child? The place to hit them is in the spice, Paul said. How can he think of attack at a time like this? She asked herself. An entire planet full of spice, she said. How can you hit them there? She heard him stirring, the sound of their pack being dragged across the tent floor. It was sea power and air power on Caladan, he said. Here it's desert power. The Fremen are the key. His voice came from the vicinity of the tent's sphincter. A Bene Gesserit training sensed in his tone an unresolved bitterness toward her. All his life he has been trained to hate Harkonnens, she thought. Now he finds he is Harkonnen because of me. How little he knows me. I was my Duke's only woman. I accepted his life and his values, even to defying my Bene Gesserit orders. The tent's glow tab came alight under Paul's hand, filled the domed area with green radiance. Paul crouched at the sphincter, his still-suit hood adjusted for the open desert, forehead capped, mouth filter in place, nose plugs adjusted. Only his dark eyes were visible, a narrow band of face that turned once toward her and away. Secure yourself for the open, he said, and his voice was blurred behind the filter. Jessica pulled the filter across her mouth, began adjusting her hood as she watched Paul break the tent seal. Sand rasped as he opened the sphincter, and a bird fizzle of grains ran into the tent before he could immobilize it with a static compaction tool. A hole grew in the sand wall as the tool realigned the grains. It slipped out, and her ears followed his progress to the surface. What will we find out there? She wondered. Harkonnen troops and the Sardaukar? Those are dangers we can expect. But what are the dangers we don't know? She thought of the compaction tool and the other strange instruments in the pack. Each of these tools suddenly stood in her mind as a sign of mysterious dangers. She felt then a hot breeze from surface sand touch her cheeks where they were exposed above the filter. Pass up the pack. It was Paul's voice, low and guarded. She moved to obey, heard the water liter-johns gurgle as she shoved the pack across the floor. She peered upward, saw Paul framed against stars. Here, he said, and reached down, pulled the pack to the surface. Now she saw only the circle of stars. They were like the luminous tips of weapons aimed down at her. A shower of meteors crossed her patch of night. The meteors seemed to her like a warning, like tiger stripes, like luminous grave slats clabbering her blood. And she felt the chill of the price on their heads. Hurry up, Paul said. I want to collapse the tent. A shower of sand from the surface brushed her left hand. How much sand will the hand hold? She asked herself. Shall I help you? Paul asked. No. She swallowed in a dry throat, slipped into the hole, felt static, packed sand rasp under her hands. Paul reached down, took her arm. She stood beside him on a smooth patch of starlit desert, stared around. Sand almost brimmed their basin, leaving only a dim lip of surrounding rock. She probed the farther darkness with her trained senses. Noise of small animals. Birds. A fall of dislodged sand and faint creature sounds within it. All collapsing their tent, recovering it up the hole. Starlight displaced just enough of the night to charge each shadow with menace. She looked at patches of blackness. Black is blind remembering, she thought. You listen for pack sounds, for the cries of those who hunted your ancestors in a past so ancient only your most primitive selves remember. The ears see, the nostrils see. Presently Paul stood beside her, said, Duncan told me that if he was captured, he could hold out this long. We must leave here now. He shouldered the pack, crossed to the shallow lip of the basin, climbed to a ledge that looked down on open desert. Jessica followed automatically, noting how she now lived in her son's orbit. For now is my grief heavier than the sands of the seas, she thought. This world has emptied me of all but the oldest purpose, tomorrow's life. I live now for my young duke and the daughter yet to be. She felt the sand drag her feet as she climbed to Paul's side. He looked north across a line of rocks, studying a distant escarpment. The faraway rock profile was like an ancient battleship of the seas outlined by stars. The long swish of it lifted on an invisible wave with syllables of boomerang antennae, funnels arching back, a pie-shaped upthrusting at the stern. An orange glare burst above the silhouette, and a line of brilliant purple cut downward toward the glare. Another line of purple, and another upthrusting orange glare. It was like an ancient naval battle, remembered shellfire, and the sight held them staring. Pillars of fire, Paul whispered. A ring of red eyes lifted over the distant rock. Lines of purple laced the sky. Jet flares and laser guns, Jessica said. The dust-reddened first moon of Arrakis lifted above the horizon to their left, and they saw a storm trail there, a ribbon of movement over the desert. It must be Harkonnen Thopters hunting us, Paul said. The way they're cutting up the desert. It's as though they were making certain they stamped out whatever's there. The way you'd stamp out a nest of insects. Or a nest of Atreides, Jessica said. We must seek cover, Paul said. We'll head south and keep to the rocks, if they caught us in the open. He turned, adjusting the pack to his shoulders. They're killing anything that moves. He took one step along the ledge and, in that instant, heard the low hiss of gliding aircraft, saw the dark shapes of ornithopters above them.
My father once told me that respect for the truth comes close to being the basis for all morality. Something cannot emerge from nothing, he said. This is profound thinking if you understand how unstable the truth can be. From Conversations with Muad'Dib by the Princess Irulan.
I've always prided myself on seeing things the way they truly are. That's the curse of being a mentat. You can't stop analyzing your data.
The leathered old face of Thufir Hawat appeared composed in the pre-dawn dimness as he spoke. His sappho-stained lips were drawn into a straight line, with radial creases spreading upward. A robed man squatted silently on sand across from Hawat, apparently unmoved by the words. The two crouched beneath a rock overhang that looked down on a wide, shallow sink. Dawn was spreading over the shattered outline of cliffs across the basin, touching everything with pink. It was cold under the overhang, a dry and penetrating chill left over from the night. There had been a warm wind just before dawn, but now it was cold. Hawat could hear teeth chattering behind him among the few troopers remaining in his force. The man squatting across from Hawat was a Fremen who had come across the sink in the first light of false dawn, skittering over the sand, blending into the dunes, his movements barely discernible. The Fremen extended a finger to the sand between them, drew a figure there. It looked like a bow with an arrow spilling out of it.
There are many Harkonnen patrols.
He lifted his finger, pointed upward across the cliffs that Hawat and his men had descended. Hawat nodded. Many patrols, yes. But still he did not know what this Fremen wanted, and this rankled. Mentat training was supposed to give a man the power to see motives. This had been the worst night of Hawat's life. He had been at Simple, a garrison village, buffer outpost for the former capital city Carthage, when the reports of attack began arriving. At first he thought, it's a raid. The Harkonnens are testing. But report followed report, faster and faster. 2 legions landed at Carthage, 5 legions, 50 brigades, attacking the Duke's main base at Arakeen, a legion at Arsund, 2 battle groups at Splintered Rock. Then the reports became more detailed. There were Imperial Sardaukar among the attackers, possibly 2 legions of them. And it became clear that the invaders knew precisely which weight of arms to send where. Precisely. Superb intelligence. Hawat's shocked fury had mounted until it threatened the smooth functioning of his Mentat capabilities. The size of the attack struck his mind like a physical blow. Now, hiding beneath a bit of desert rock, he nodded to himself, pulled his torn and slashed tunic around him as though warding off the cold shadows. The size of the attack. He had always expected their enemy to hire an occasional lighter from the guild for probing raids. That was an ordinary enough gambit in this kind of house-to-house warfare. Lighters landed and took off on Arrakis regularly to transport the spice for House Atreides. Hawat had taken precautions against random raids by false spice lighters. For a full attack, they'd expected no more than 10 brigades. But there were more than 2,000 ships down on Arrakis at the last count. Not just lighters, but frigates, scouts, monitors, crushers, troop carriers, dump boxes. More than 100 brigades, 10 legions. The entire spice income of Arrakis for 50 years might just cover the cost of such a venture. It might. I underestimated what the Baron was willing to spend in attacking us, Hawat thought. I failed my Duke. Then there was the matter of the traitor. I will live long enough to see her strangled, he thought. I should have killed that Bene Gesserit witch when I had the chance. There was no doubt in his mind who had betrayed them. The Lady Jessica. She fitted all the facts available.
Your man Gurney Halleck and part of his force are safe with our smuggler friends.
Good.
So Gurney will get off this hell planet. They're not all gone. Hawat glanced back at the huddle of his men. They had started the night just past with 300 of his finest. Of those, an even 20 remained, and half of them were wounded. Some of them slept now, standing up, leaning against the rock, sprawled on the sand beneath the rock. Their last Thopter, the one they'd been using as a ground effect machine to carry their wounded, had given out just before dawn. They had cut it up with laser guns and hidden the pieces, then worked their way down into this hiding place at the edge of the basin. Hawat had only a rough idea of their location. Some 200 kilometers southeast of Arakeen. The main traveled ways between the Shield Wall CH communities were somewhere south of them. The Fremen across from Hawat threw back his hood and still-suit cap to reveal sandy hair and beard. The hair was combed straight back from a high, thin forehead. He had the unreadable total blue eyes of the spice diet. Beard and mustache were stained at one side of the mouth, his hair matted there by pressure of the looping catch tube from his nose plugs. The man removed his plugs, readjusted them. He rubbed at a scar beside his nose.
If you cross the sink here this night, you must not use shields. There is a break in the wall.
He turned on his heels, pointed south.
There. And it is open sand down to the Erg. Shields will attract it. Worm. They don't often come in here, but a shield will bring one every time.
He said worm, Hawat thought. He was going to say something else. What? And what does he want of us? Howard sighed. He could not recall ever before being this tired. It was a muscle weariness that energy pills were unable to ease. Those damnable Sardaukar. With a self-accusing bitterness, he faced the thought of the soldier fanatics and the imperial treachery they represented. His own meant-out assessment of the data told him how little chance he had ever to present evidence of this treachery before the High Council of the Landsrat, where justice might be done.
Do you wish to go to the smugglers?
Is it possible?
The way is long.
Fremen don't like to say no, Idaho had told him once.
You haven't yet told me whether your people can help my wounded.
They are wounded.
The same damned answer every time.
We know they're wounded. That's not the
Peace, friend. What do your wounded say? Are there those among them who can see the water need of your tribe?
We haven't talked about water.
I can understand your reluctance. They are your friends, your tribesmen. Do you have water?
Not enough.
The Fremen gestured to Howard's tunic, the skin exposed beneath it.
You were caught in CH without your suits. You must make a water decision, friend.
Can we hire your help?
The Fremen shrugged.
You have no water.
He glanced at the group behind Howard.
How many of your wounded would you spend?
Howard fell silent, staring at the man. He could see as a mentat that their communication was out of phase. Word sounds were not being linked up here in the normal manner.
I am Pt.4, Howard. I can speak for my duke. I will make promissory commitment now for your help. I wish a limited form of help, preserving my force long enough only to kill a traitor who thinks herself beyond vengeance.
You wish our siding in a vendetta?
The vendetta I'll handle myself. I wish to be freed of responsibility for my wounded, that I may get about it.
The Fremen scowled.
How can you be responsible for your wounded? They are their own responsibility. The water's at issue, Pt.4, Howard. Would you have me take that decision away from you?
The man put a hand to a weapon concealed beneath his robe. Howard tensed, wondering, is there betrayal here?
What do you fear?
These people and their disconcerting directness. Howard spoke cautiously.
There's a price on my head.
The Fremen removed his hand from his weapon.
You think we have the Byzantine corruption. You don't know us. The Harkonnens have not water enough to buy the smallest child among us.
But they had the price of guild passage for more than 2,000 fighting ships, Howard thought. And the size of that price still staggered him.
We both fight Harkonnens. Should we not share the problems and ways of meeting the battle issue?
We are sharing. I have seen you fight Harkonnens. You are good. There have been times I'd have appreciated your arm beside me.
Say where my arm may help you.
Who knows? There are Harkonnen forces everywhere. But you still have not made the water decision or put it to your wounded.
I must be cautious, Howard told himself. There's a thing here that's not understood.
Will you show me your way? The Arakeen way?
Stranger thinking.
There was a sneer in the Fremen's tone. He pointed to the northwest, across the cliff top.
We watched you come across the sand last night. You keep your force on the slip face of the dunes. That. You have no skill suits, no water. You will not last long.
The ways of Arrakis don't come easily.
Truth. But we've killed Harkonnens.
What do you do with your own wounded?
Does a man not know when he is worth saving? You're wounded. No, you have no water.
He tilted his head, looking sideways up at Howard.
This is clearly a time for water decision. Both wounded and unwounded must look to the tribe's future.
The tribe's future, Howard thought. The tribe of Atreides. There's sense in that. He forced himself to the question he had been avoiding.
Have you word of my duke or his son?
Unreadable blue eyes stared upward into Howard's.
Word.
Their fate.
Fate is the same for everyone. Your duke, it is said, has met his fate. As to the Lisan al-Gaib, his son, that is in Liet's hands. Liet has not said.
I knew the answer without asking, Howard thought. He glanced back at his men. They were all awake now. They had heard. They were staring out across the sand, the realization in their expressions there was no returning to Caladan for them. And now Arrakis was lost. Howard turned back to the Fremen.
Have you heard of Duncan, Idaho?
He was in the great house when the shield went down. This I've heard. No more.
She dropped the shield and let in the Harkonnens, he thought. I was the one who sat with my back to a door. How could she do this when it meant turning also against her own son? But who knows how a Bene Gesserit witch thinks, if you can call it thinking. Howard tried to swallow in a dry throat.
When will you hear about the boy?
We know little of what happens in Eriki. Who knows?
You have ways of finding out.
Perhaps.
The Fremen rubbed at the scar beside his nose.
Tell me, Thufir Howard, do you have knowledge of the big weapons the Harkonnens used?
The artillery, Howard thought busily. Who could have guessed they'd use artillery in this day of shields?
You refer to the artillery they used to trap our people in the caves. I've theoretical knowledge of such explosive weapons.
Any man who retreats into a cave which has only one opening deserves to die.
Why do you ask about these weapons?
Liet wishes it.
Is that what he wants from us? Howard wondered.
Did you come here seeking information about the big guns?
Liet wished to see one of the weapons for himself.
Then you should just go take one.
Yes, we took one. We have it hidden where Stilgar can study it for Liet, and where Liet can see it for himself if he wishes. But I doubt he'll want to. The weapon is not a very good one. Poor design for Arrakis.
You took one.
It was a good fight. We lost only 2 men and spilled the water for more than 100 of theirs.
There was Sardaukar at every gun, Howard thought. This desert madman speaks casually of losing only 2 men against Sardaukar.
We would not have lost the 2 except for those others fighting beside the Harkonnens. Some of those are good fighters.
One of Howard's men limped forward, looking down at the squatting Fremen. Are you talking about Sardaukar?
He's talking about Sardaukar.
Sardaukar? Ah, so that's what they are. This was a good night indeed. Sardaukar. Which legion do you know?
We don't know.
Sardaukar. Yet they wear Harkonnen clothing. Is that not strange?
The Emperor does not wish it known he fights against the great house.
But you know they are Sardaukar.
Who am I?
You are Thufir Howard. Well, we would have learned it in time. We've sent 3 of them captive to be questioned by Liet's men.
You captured Sardaukar?
Only 3 of them. They fought well.
If only we'd had the time to link up with these Fremen, Howard thought. There was a sour lament in his mind. If only we could have trained them and armed them. Great Mother, what a fighting force we'd have had.
Perhaps you delay because of worry over the Lisan al-Gaib. If he is truly the Lisan al-Gaib, harm cannot touch him. Do not spend thoughts on a matter which has not been proved.
I served Lisan al-Gaib. His welfare is my concern. I've pledged myself to this.
You are pledged to his water?
Howard glanced at his aide, who was still staring at the Fremen, returned his attention to the squatting figure.
To his water, yes.
You wish to return to Eriki, to the place of his water?
Yes, to the place of his water.
Why did you not say at first it was a water matter?
The Fremen stood up, seated his nose plugs firmly. Howard motioned with his head for his aide to return to the others. With a tired shrug, the man obeyed. Howard heard a low-voiced conversation arise among the men.
There is always a way to water.
Behind Howard, a man cursed. Howard's aide called him.
Thufir, Arky just died.
The Fremen put a fist to his ear.
The bond of water. It's a sign.
He stared at Howard.
We have a place nearby for accepting the water. Shall I call my men?
The aide returned to Howard's side.
Thufir, a couple of the men left wives in Arakeen. They're, well, you know how it is at a time like this.
The Fremen still held his fist to his ear.
Is it the bond of water, Thufir Hawat?
Howard's mind was racing. He sensed now the direction of the Fremen's words, but feared the reaction of the tired men under the rock overhang when they understood it.
The bond of water.
Let our tribes be joined.
The Fremen lowered his fist. As though that were the signal, 4 men slid and dropped down from the rocks above them. They darted back under the overhang, rolled the dead man in a loose robe, lifted him, and began running with him along the cliff wall to the right. Spurts of dust lifted around their running feet. It was over before Howard's tired men could gather their wits. The group, with the body hanging like a sack in its enfolding robe, was gone around a turn in the cliff.
Where are they going with Arky? He was...
They're taking him to bury him.
Fremen don't bury their dead. Would you try any tricks on us, Thufir? We know what they do. Arky was one of...
Paradise were sure for a man who died in the service of Lisan al-Gaib. If it is the Lisan al-Gaib you serve, as you have said it, why raise mourning cries? The memory of one who died in this fashion will live as long as the memory of man endures.
But Howard's men advanced, angry looks on their faces. One had captured a laser gun. He started to draw it.
Stop right where you are.
Howard fought down the sick fatigue that gripped his muscles.
These people respect our dead. Customs differ, but the meaning's the same.
They're going to render Arky down for his water.
Is it that your men wish to attend the ceremony?
He doesn't even see the problem, Howard thought. The naivety of the Fremen was frightening.
They're concerned for a respected comrade.
We will treat your comrade with the same reverence we treat our own. This is the bond of water. We know the rights. A man's flesh is his own. The water belongs to the tribe.
Howard spoke quickly as the man with the laser gun advanced another step.
Will you now help our wounded?
One does not question the bond. We will do for you what a tribe does for its own. First, we must get all of you suited and see to the necessities.
The man with the laser gun hesitated. Howard's aide spoke.
Are we buying help with Arky's water?
Not buying. We've joined these people. Customs differ.
Howard began to relax.
And they'll help us get to Arakeen?
We will kill Harkonnens and Sardaukar.
The Fremen grinned. He stepped backward, cupped his hands beside his ears, and tipped his head back, listening. Presently, he lowered his hands.
An aircraft comes. Conceal yourselves beneath the rock and remain motionless.
At a gesture from Howard, his men obeyed. The Fremen took Howard's arm, pressed him back with the others.
We will fight in the time of fighting.
He reached beneath his robes, brought out a small cage, lifted a creature from it. Howard recognized a tiny bat. The bat turned its head, and Howard saw its blue within blue eyes. The Fremen stroked the bat, soothing it, crooning to it. He bent over the animal's head, allowed a drop of saliva to fall from his tongue into the bat's upturned mouth. The bat stretched its wings, but remained on the Fremen's opened hand. The man took a tiny tube, held it beside the bat's head, and chattered into the tube. Then, lifting the creature high, he threw it upward. The bat swooped away beside the cliff and was lost to sight. The Fremen folded the cage, thrust it beneath his robe. Again he bent his head, listening.
They quarter the high country. One wonders who they seek up there.
It's known that we retreated in this direction.
One should never presume one is the sole object of a hunt. Watch the other side of the basin. You will see a thing.
Time passed. Some of Howard's men stirred, whispering.
Remain silent as frightened animals,
the Fremen hissed. Howard discerned movement near the opposite cliff, flitting blurs of tan on tan.
My little friend carried his message,
the Fremen said.
He is a good messenger, day or night. I'll be unhappy to lose that one.
The movement across the sink faded away. On the entire 4 to 5 kilometer expanse of sand, nothing remained but the growing pressure of the day's heat-blurred columns of rising air.
Be most silent now,
the Fremen whispered. A file of plodding figures emerged from a break in the opposite cliff, headed directly across the sink. To Howard, they appeared to be Fremen, but a curiously inept band. He counted 6 men making heavy going of it over the dunes. A thwack-thwack of ornithopter wings sounded high to the right, behind Howard's group. The craft came over the cliff wall above them. An Atreides thopter with Harkonnen battle colors splashed on it. The thopter swooped toward the men crossing the sink. The group there stopped on a dune crest, waved. The thopter circled once over them in a tight curve, came back for a dust-shrouded landing in front of the Fremen. 5 men swarmed from the thopter, and Howard saw the dust-repellent shimmering of shields, and in their motions the hard competence of Sardaukar.
Aye, they use their stupid shields,
the Fremen beside Howard hissed. He glanced toward the open south wall of the sink.
They are Sardaukar,
Howard whispered.
Good.
The Sardaukar approached the waiting group of Fremen in an enclosing half-circle. Sun glinted on blades held ready. The Fremen stood in a compact group, apparently indifferent. Abruptly, the sand around the 2 groups sprouted Fremen. They were at the ornithopter, then in it. Where the 2 groups had met at the dune crest, a dust cloud partly obscured violent motion. Presently, dust settled. Only Fremen remained standing.
They left only 3 men in their thopter,
the Fremen beside Howard said.
That was fortunate. I don't believe we had to damage the craft in taking it.
Behind Howard, one of his men whispered,
Those were Sardaukar. Did you notice how well they fought?
The Fremen asked. Howard took a deep breath. He smelled the burned dust around him, felt the heat, the dryness. In a voice to match that dryness, he said,
Yes, they fought well indeed.
The captured thopter took off with a lurching flap of wings, angled upward to the south in a steep wing-tucked climb.
So these Fremen can handle thopters too,
Howard thought. On the distant dune, a Fremen waved a square of green cloth, once, twice.
More come,
the Fremen beside Howard barked.
Be ready. I'd hoped to have us away without more inconvenience.
Inconvenience, Howard thought. He saw 2 more thopters swooping from high in the west onto an area of sand suddenly devoid of visible Fremen. Only 8 splotches of blue, the bodies of the Sardaukar in Harkonnen uniforms, remained at the scene of violence. Another thopter glided in over the cliff wall above Howard. He drew in a sharp breath as he saw it, a big troop carrier. It flew with the slow spread wing heaviness of a full load, like a giant bird coming to its nest. In the distance, the purple finger of a lasgun beam flicked from one of the diving thopters. It laced across the sand, raising a sharp trail of dust.
The cowards,
the Fremen beside Howard rasped. The troop carrier settled toward the patch of blue-clad bodies. Its wings crept out to full reach, began the cupping action of a quick stop. Howard's attention was caught by a flash of sun on metal to the south. A thopter plummeting there in a power dive, wings folded flat against its sides, its jets a golden flare against the dark silvered grey of the sky. It plunged like an arrow toward the troop carrier, which was unshielded because of the lasgun activity around it. Straight into the carrier the diving Thopter plunged. A flaming roar shook the basin. Rocks tumbled from the cliff walls all around. A geyser of red-orange shot skyward from the sand where the carrier and its companion Thopters had been. Everything there caught in flame. It was the Fremen who took off in that captured Thopter, Howard thought. He deliberately sacrificed himself to get that carrier. Great Mother, what are these Fremen? A reasonable exchange, said the Fremen beside Howard. There must have been 300 men in that carrier. Now, we must see to their water and make plans to get another aircraft. He started to step out of their rock. A rain of blue uniforms came over the cliff wall in front of him, falling in low suspense of slowness. In the flashing instant, Howard had time to see that they were Sardaukar. Hard faces set in battle frenzy, that they were unshielded, and each carried a knife in one hand, a stunner in the other. A thrown knife caught Howard's Fremen companion in the throat, hurling him backward, twisting face down. Howard had only time to draw his own knife before blackness of a stunner projectile
all kind of stuff I missed. Ain't that some shit?
Muad'Dib could indeed see the future, but you must understand the limits of this power. Think of sight. You have eyes, yet cannot see without light. If you are on the floor of a valley, you cannot see beyond your valley. Just so, Muad'Dib could not always choose to look across the mysterious terrain. He tells us that a single obscure decision of prophecy, perhaps the choice of one word over another, could change the entire aspect of the future. He tells us, the vision of time is broad, but when you pass through it, time becomes a narrow door. And always, he fought the temptation to choose a clear, safe course, warning, that path leads ever down into stagnation. From Arrakis Awakening by the Princess Irulan.
As the ornithopters glided out of the night above them, Paul grabbed his mother's arm, snapped. Don't move. Then he saw the lead craft in the moonlight, the way its wings cut to brake for landing, the reckless dash of the hands at the controls. It's Idaho, he breathed. The craft and its companions settled into the basin like a covey of birds coming to nest. Idaho was out of his thopter and running toward them before the dust settled. Two figures in Fremen robes followed him. Paul recognized one, the tall, sandy-bearded Kynes. This way, Kynes called, and he veered left. Behind Kynes, other Fremen were throwing fabric covers over their ornithopters. The craft became a row of shallow dunes. Idaho skidded to a stop in front of Paul, saluted. "My lord, the Fremen have a temporary hiding place nearby where we—" "What about that, back there?" Paul pointed to the violence above the distant cliff, the jet flares, the purple beams of laser guns lacing the desert. A rare smile touched Idaho's round, placid face. "My lord, sire, I've left them a little Glaring white light filled the desert, bright as a sun, etching their shadows onto the rock floor of the ledge. In one sweeping motion, Idaho had Paul's arm in one hand, Jessica's shoulder in the other, hurling them down off the ledge into the basin. They sprawled together in the sand as the roar of an explosion thundered over them. Its shock wave tumbled chips off the rock ledge they had vacated. Idaho sat up, brushed sand from himself. "Not the family atomics," Jessica said. "I thought—" "You planted a shield back there," Paul said. "A big one. Turned to full force," Idaho said. "A lasgun beam touched it and—" He shrugged. "Subatomic fusion," Jessica said. "That's a dangerous weapon." "Not weapon, milady. Defense. That scum will think twice before using laser guns another time." The Fremen from the ornithopters stopped above them. One called in a low voice, "We should get under cover, friends." Paul got to his feet as Idaho helped Jessica up. "That blast will attract considerable attention, sire," Idaho said. Sire, Paul thought. The word had such a strange sound when directed at him. Sire had always been his father. He felt himself touched briefly by his powers of prescience. seeing himself infected by the wild race
Hey,
consciousness
Morgan,
that was
how you
moving the
doing?
human universe
Good to
toward
see you.
chaos. The vision left him shaken, and he allowed Idaho to guide him along the edge of the basin to a rock projection. Fremen there were opening a way down into the sand with their compaction tools. "May I take your pack, sire?" Idaho asked. "It's not heavy, Duncan," Paul said. "You have no body
Right,
shield,"
long time no
Idaho
see,
said.
bro.
"You wish
Good to
mine?"
see you.
He glanced at the distant cliff. "Not likely there'll be any more laser gun activity about." "Keep your shield, Duncan. Your right arm is shield enough for me." Jessica saw the way the praise took effect, how Idaho moved closer to Paul, and she thought, "Such a sure hand my son has with his people." The Fremen removed a rock plug that opened a passage down into the native basement complex of the desert. A camouflage cover was rigged for the opening. "This way," one of the Fremen said, and he led them down rock steps into darkness. Behind them, the cover blotted out the moonlight. A dim green glow came alive ahead, revealing the steps and rock walls, a turn to the left. Robed Fremen were all around them now, pressing downward. They rounded the corner, found another down-slanting passage. It opened into a rough cave chamber. Kynes stood before them, jabber hood thrown back, the neck of his stillsuit glistening in the green light. His long hair and beard were mussed, the blue eyes without whites were a darkness under heavy brows. In the moment of encounter, Kynes wondered at himself.
Do you?
Why am I
I'm only
helping
using
these
free
people?
one.
It's the most dangerous thing I've ever done. It could doom me with them. Then he looked squarely at Paul, seeing the boy who had taken on the mantle of manhood, masking grief, suppressing all except the position that now must be assumed, the dukedom. And Kynes realized in that moment the dukedom still existed, and solely because of this youth. And this was not a thing to be taken lightly. Jessica glanced once around the chamber, registering it on her senses in the Bene Gesserit way, a laboratory, a civil place full of angles and squares in the ancient manner. "This is one of the Imperial ecological testing stations my father wanted as advanced bases," Paul said. His father wanted, Kynes thought. And again Kynes wondered at himself. Am I foolish to aid these fugitives? Why am I doing it? It'd be so easy to take them now, to buy the Harkonnen trust with them. Paul followed his mother's example, gestalting the room, seeing the workbench down one side, the walls of featureless rock. Instruments lined the bench, dials glowing, wire Gridex planes with fluting glass emerging from them. An ozone smell permeated the place. Some of the Fremen moved on around a concealing angle in the chamber, and new sounds started there. Machine coughs, the whinnies of spinning belts and multi-drives. Paul looked to the end of the room, saw cages with small animals in them stacked against the wall. "You've recognized this place correctly," Kynes said. "For what would you use such a place, Paul Atreides?" "To make this planet a fit place for humans," Paul said. Perhaps that's why I helped them, Kynes thought. The machine sounds abruptly hummed away to silence. Into this void there came a thin animal squeak from the cages. It was cut off abruptly, as though in embarrassment. Paul returned his attention to the cages, saw that the animals were brown-winged bats. An automatic feeder extended from the side wall across the cages. A Fremen emerged from the hidden area of the chamber, spoke to Kynes. "Liet, the field generator equipment is not working. I am unable to mask us from proximity detectors." "Can you repair it?" Kynes asked. "Not quickly. The parts," the man shrugged. "Yes," Kynes said. "Then we'll do without machinery. Get a hand pump for air out to the surface." "Immediately," the man hurried away. Kynes turned back to Paul. "You gave a good answer." Jessica marked the easy rumble of the man's voice. It was a royal voice accustomed to command, and she had not missed the reference to him as Liet. Liet was the Fremen alter ego, the other face of the tame planetologist. "We are most grateful for your help, Dr. Kynes," she said. "Mm-hmm. We'll see," Kynes said. He nodded to one of his men. "Spice coffee in my quarters, Shamir?" "At once, Liet," the man said. Kynes indicated an arched opening in the side wall of the chamber. "If you please." Jessica allowed herself a regal nod before accepting. She saw Paul give a hand signal to Idaho, telling him to mount guard here. The passage, 2 paces deep, opened through a heavy door into a square office lighted by golden glow globes. Jessica passed her hand across the door as she entered, was startled to identify plasteel. Paul stepped 3 paces into the room,
Yeah, that's
dropped
cool.
his pack to the floor.
I like it because they
He
give
heard the
you
door close behind him.
20
shuttered the
hours
place.
free for like a
About
month.
8 meters to a side,
Right?
walls
So
of
if I had the
natural
money,
rock,
I would
curry-coloured, broken by metal
I
filing
would do the
cabinets
paid
on their right.
version, but
A low desk with milk glass
do the
top
20
chock
the
full of
20
yellow
hours,
bubbles
yeah.
occupied the room's centre. 4 suspensor chairs ringed the
Go back
desk.
to YouTube.
Kynes moved around Paul, held a chair for Jessica. She sat down, noting the way her son examined the room. Paul remained standing for another eye blink. A faint anomaly in the room's air currents told him there was a secret exit to their right, behind the filing cabinets. "Will you sit down, Paul Atreides?" Kynes asked. How carefully he avoids my title, Paul thought. But he accepted the chair, remained silent while Kynes sat down. "You sense that Arrakis could be a paradise," Kynes said. "Yet as you see, the Imperium sends here only its trained hatchet men, its seekers after the spice." Paul held up his thumb with its ducal signet. "Do you see this ring?" "Yes." "Do you know its significance?" Jessica turned sharply to stare at her son. "Your father lies dead in the ruins of Arrakeen," Kynes said. "You are technically the Duke." "I'm a soldier of the Imperium," Paul said. "Technically a hatchet man." Kynes' face darkened. "Even with the Emperor's Sardaukar standing over your father's body?" "The Sardaukar are one thing. The legal source of my authority is another," Paul said. "Arrakis has its own way of determining who wears the mantle of authority," Kynes said. And Jessica, turning back to look at him, thought, "There's steel in this man that no one has taken the temper out of. And we've need of steel. Paul's doing a dangerous thing." Paul said, "The Sardaukar on Arrakis are a measure of how much our beloved Emperor feared my father. Now I will give the Padishah Emperor reasons to fear the—" "Lad," Kynes said, "there are things you don't—" "You will address me as sire or my lord," Paul said. Gently, Jessica thought. Kynes stared at Paul, and Jessica noted the glint of admiration in the planetologist's face, the touch of humor there. "Sire," Kynes said. "I am an embarrassment to the Emperor," Paul said. "I am an embarrassment to all who would divide Arrakis as their spoil. As I live, I shall continue to be such an embarrassment that I stick in their throats and choke them to death." "Words," Kynes said. Paul stared at him. Presently, Paul said, "You have a legend of the Lisan al-Gaib here, the voice from the outer world, the one who will lead the Fremen to paradise. Your men have—" "Superstition," Kynes said. "Perhaps," Paul agreed, "yet perhaps not. Superstitions sometimes have strange roots and stranger branchings." "You have a plan," Kynes said. "This much is obvious, sire." "Could your Fremen provide me with proof positive that the Sardaukar are here in Harkonnen uniform?" "Quite likely." "The Emperor will put a Harkonnen back in power here," Paul said. "Perhaps even Beast Rabban. Let him. Once he has involved himself beyond escaping his guilt, let the Emperor face the possibility of a bill of particulars laid before the Landsraad. Let him answer there where—" "Paul," Jessica said. "Granted that the Landsraad High Council accepts your case," Kynes said, There could be only one outcome. General warfare between the Imperium and the great houses. Chaos, Jessica said. But I'd present my case to the Emperor, Paul said, and give him an alternative to chaos. Jessica spoke in a dry tone. Blackmail? One of the tools of statecraft, as you've said yourself, Paul said, and Jessica heard the bitterness in his voice. The Emperor has no sons, only daughters. You'd aim for the throne? Jessica asked. The Emperor will not risk having the Imperium shattered by total war, Paul said. Planets blasted, disorder everywhere. He'll not risk that. This is a desperate gamble you propose, Kynes said. What do the great houses of the Landsrot fear most? Paul asked. They fear most what is happening here right now on Arrakis, the Sardaukar picking them off one by one. That's why there is a Landsrot. This is the glue of the Great Convention. Only in union do they match the Imperial forces. But this is what they fear, Paul said. Arrakis would become a rallying cry. Each of them would see himself in my father, cut out of the herd and killed. Kynes spoke to Jessica. Would his plan work? I know Mentat, Jessica said. But you are Bene Gesserit. She shot a probing stare at him, said, his plan has good points and bad points, as any plan would at this stage. A plan depends as much upon execution as it does upon concept. Law is the ultimate science, Paul quoted. Thus it reads above the Emperor's door. I propose to show him law. And I'm not sure I could trust the person who conceived this plan, Kynes said. Arrakis has its own plan that we... From the throne, Paul said. I could make a paradise of Arrakis with a wave of a hand. This is the coin I offer for your support. Kynes stiffened. My loyalty is not for sale, sire. Paul stared across the desk at him, meeting the cold glare of those blue within blue eyes, studying the bearded face, the commanding appearance. A harsh smile touched Paul's lips, and he said, well spoken. I apologize. Kynes met Paul's stare, and presently said, no Harkonnen ever admitted error. Perhaps you're not like them, Atreides. It could be a fault in their education, Paul said. You say you're not for sale, but I believe I've the coin you'll accept. For your loyalty, I offer my loyalty to you. Totally. My son has the Atreides sincerity, Jessica thought. He has that tremendous, almost naive honor. And what a powerful force that truly is. She saw that Paul's words had shaken Kynes. This is nonsense, Kynes said. You're just a boy, and I'm the Duke, Paul said. I'm an Atreides. No Atreides has ever broken such a bond. Kynes swallowed. When I say totally, Paul said, I mean without reservation. I would give my life for you. Sire, Kynes said, and the word was torn from him. But Jessica saw that he was not now speaking to a boy of 15, but to a man, to a superior. Now Kynes meant the word. In this moment he'd give his life for Paul, she thought. How do the Atreides accomplish this thing so quickly, so easily? I know you mean this, Kynes said. Yet the Harkonnen... The door behind Paul slammed open. He whirled to see reeling violence, shouting, the clash of steel, wax-image faces grimacing in the passage. With his mother beside him, Paul leaped for the door, seeing Idaho blocking the passage, his blood-pitted eyes there visible through a shield blur, claw hands beyond him, arcs of steel chopping futilely at the shield. There was the orange firemouth of a stunner repelled by the shield. Idaho's blades were through it all, flicking, red dripping from them. Then Kynes was beside Paul, and they threw their weight against the door. Paul had one last glimpse of Idaho standing against a swarm of Harkonnen uniforms, his jerking, controlled staggers, the black goat hair with a red blossom of death in it. Then the door was closed, and there came a snick as Kynes threw the bolts. I appear to have decided, Kynes said. Someone detected your machinery before it was shut down, Paul said. He pulled his mother away from the door, met the despair in her eyes. I should have suspected trouble when the coffee failed to arrive, Kynes said. You've a bolt hole out of here, Paul said. Shall we use it? Kynes took a deep breath, said. This door should hold for at least 20 minutes, against all but a laser gun. They'll not use a laser gun for fear we've shields on this side, Paul said. Those were Sardaukar in Harkonnen uniform, Jessica whispered. They could hear pounding on the door now, rhythmic blows. Kynes indicated the cabinets against the right-hand wall, said, This way. He crossed to the first cabinet, opened a drawer, manipulated a handle within it. The entire wall of cabinets swung open to expose the black mouth of a tunnel. This door also is plasteel, Kynes said. You were well prepared, Jessica said. We lived under the Harkonnens for 80 years, Kynes said. He herded them into the darkness, closed the door. In the sudden blackness, Jessica saw a luminous arrow on the floor ahead of her. Kynes' voice came from behind them. We'll separate here. This wall is tougher. It'll stand for at least an hour. Follow the arrows like that one on the floor. They'll be extinguished by your passage. They lead through a maze to another exit where I've secreted a thopter. There's a storm across the desert tonight. Your only hope is to run for that storm, dive into the top of it, ride with it. My people have done this in stealing thopters. If you stay high in the storm, you'll survive. What of you? Paul asked. I'll try to escape another way. If I'm captured, well, I'm still Imperial planetologist. I can say I was your captain. Running like cowards, Paul thought. But how else can I live to avenge my father? He turned to face the door. Jessica heard him move, said, Duncan's dead, Paul. You saw the wound. You can do nothing for him. I'll take full payment for the ball one day, Paul said. Not unless you hurry now, Kynes said. Paul felt the man's hand on his shoulder. Where will we meet, Kynes? Paul asked. I'll send Fremen searching for you. The storm's path is known. Hurry now. The Great Mother give you speed and luck. They heard him go, a scrambling in the blackness. Jessica found Paul's hand, pulled him gently. We must not get separated, she said. Yes. He followed her across the first arrow, seeing it go black as they touched it. Another arrow beckoned ahead. They crossed it, saw it extinguish itself, saw another arrow ahead. They were running now. Plans within plans, within plans within plans, Jessica thought. Have we become part of someone else's plan now? The arrows led them around turnings, past side openings only dimly sensed in the faint luminescence. Their way slanted downward for a time, then up, ever up. They came finally to steps, rounded a corner, and were brought short by a glowing wall with a dark handle visible in its center. Paul pressed the handle. The wall swung away from them. Light flared to reveal a rock-hewn cavern with an ornithopter squatting in its center. A flat grey wall with a door sign on it loomed beyond the aircraft. Where did Kynes go? Jessica asked. He did what any good guerrilla leader would, Paul said. He separated us into two parties and arranged that he couldn't reveal where we are if he's captured. He won't really know. Paul drew her into the room, noting how their feet kicked up dust on the floor. No one's been here for a long time, he said. He seemed confident the Fremen could find us, she said. I share that confidence. Paul released her hand, crossed to the ornithopter's left door, opened it and secured his pack in the rear. This ship's proximity mast, he said. Instrument panel has remote door control, light control. 80 years under the Harkonnens taught them to be thorough. Jessica leaned against the craft's other side, catching her breath. The Harkonnens will have a covering force over this area, she said. They're not stupid. She considered her direction sense, pointed right. The storm we saw is that way. Paul nodded, fighting an abrupt reluctance to move. He knew its cause, but found no help in the knowledge. Somewhere this night he had passed a decision nexus into the deep unknown. He knew the time area surrounding them, but the here and now existed as a place of mystery. It was as though he had seen himself from a distance go out of sight down into a valley. Of the countless paths up out of that valley, some might carry a Paul Atreides back into sight, but many would not. "The longer we wait, the better prepared they'll be," Jessica said. "Get in and strap yourself down," he said. He joined her in the ornithopter, still wrestling with the thought that this was blind ground, unseen in any prescient vision. And he realized with an abrupt sense of shock that he had been giving more and more reliance to prescient memory, and it had weakened him for this particular emergency. If you rely only on your eyes, your other senses weaken. It was a Bene Gesserit axiom. He took it to himself now, promising never again to fall into that trap, if he lived through this. Paul fastened his safety harness, saw that his mother was secure, checked the aircraft. The wings were at full spread rest, their delicate metal interleavings extended. He touched the retractor bar, watched the wings shorten for jet boost takeoff, the way Gurney Halleck had taught him. The starter switch moved easily. Dials on the instrument panel came alive as the jet pods were armed. Turbines began their low hissing. "Ready?" he asked. "Yes." He touched the remote control for lights. Darkness blanketed them. His hand was a shadow against the luminous dials as he tripped the remote door control. Grating sounded ahead of them. A cascade of sand swished away to silence. A dusty breeze touched Paul's cheeks. He closed his door, feeling the sudden pressure. A wide patch of dust-blurred stars, framed in angular darkness, appeared where the door wall had been. Starlight defined a shelf beyond, a suggestion of sand ripples. Paul depressed the glowing action sequence switch on his panel. The wings snapped back and down, hurling the Thopter out of its nest. Power surged from the jet pods as the wings locked into lift attitude. Jessica let her hands ride lightly on the dual controls, feeling the sureness of her son's movements. She was frightened, yet exhilarated. Now, Paul's training is our only hope, she thought. His youth and swiftness. Paul fed more power to the jet pods. The Thopter banked, sinking them into their seats as a dark wall lifted against the stars ahead. He gave the craft more wing, more power. Another burst of lifting wing beats, and they came out over rocks, silver-frosted angles and outcroppings in the starlight. The dust-reddened second moon showed itself above the horizon to their right, defining the ribbon trail of the storm. Paul's hands danced over the controls. Wings snicked into beetle stubs. G-force pulled at their flesh as the craft came around in a tight bank. "Jet flares behind us," Jessica said. "I saw them." He slammed the power arm forward. Their Thopter leaped like a frightened animal, surged southwest toward the storm and the great curve of desert. In the near distance, Paul saw scattered shadows telling where the line of rocks ended, the basement complex sinking beneath the dunes. Beyond stretched moonlit fingernail shadows, dunes diminishing one into another. And above the horizon climbed the flat immensity of the storm like a wall against the stars. Something jarred the Thopter. "Shell burst," Jessica gasped. "They're using some kind of projectile weapon." She saw a sudden animal grin on Paul's face. "They seem to be avoiding their las guns," he said. "But we've no shields." "Do they know that?" Again the Thopter shuddered. Paul twisted to peer back. "Only one of them appears to be fast enough to keep up with us." He returned his attention to their course, watching the storm wall grow high in front of him. It loomed like a tangible solid. Projectile launchers, rockets, all the ancient weaponry. That's one thing we'll give the Fremen, Paul whispered. The storm, Jessica said. Hadn't you better turn? What about the ship behind us? He's pulling up. Now. Paul stubbed the wings, banked hard left into the deceptively slow boiling of the storm wall, felt his cheeks pull in the G-force. They appeared to glide into a slow clouding of dust that grew heavier and heavier until it blotted out the desert and the moon. The aircraft became a long, horizontal whisper of darkness, lighted only by the green luminosity of the instrument panel. Through Jessica's mind flashed all the warnings about such storms, that they cut metal like butter, etched flesh to bone and ate away the bones. She felt the buffeting of dust-blanketed wind. It twisted them as Paul fought the controls. She saw him chop the power, felt the ship buck. The metal around them hissed and trembled. "Sand!" Jessica shouted. She saw the negative shake of his head in the light from the panel. Not much sand this high, but she could feel them sinking deeper into the maelstrom. Paul sent the wings to their full, soaring length, heard them creak with the strain. He kept his eyes fixed on the instruments, gliding by instinct, fighting for altitude. The sound of their passage diminished. The Thopter began rolling off to the left. Paul focused on the glowing globe within the attitude curve, fought his craft back to level flight. Jessica had the eerie feeling that they were standing still, that all motion was external. A vague tan flowing against the windows, a rumbling hiss reminded her of the powers around them. Winds to 700 or 800 kilometers an hour, she thought. Adrenaline edginess gnawed at her. I must not fear, she told herself, mouthing the words of the Bene Gesserit litany. Fear is the mind killer. Slowly her long years of training prevailed. Calmness returned. We have the tiger by the tail, Paul whispered. We can't go down, can't land. I don't think I can lift us out of this. We'll have to ride it out. Calmness drained out of her. Jessica felt her teeth chattering, clamped them together. Then she heard Paul's voice, low and controlled, reciting the litany. Fear is the mind killer. Fear is the little death that brings total obliteration. I will face my fear. I will permit it to pass over me and through me. And when it has gone past me, I will turn to see fear's path. Where the fear has gone, there will be nothing. Only I will remain.
What do you despise? By this you are truly known. From Manual of Muad'Dib by the Princess Irulan.
They're dead, Baron. Both the woman and the boy are certainly dead.
The Baron Vladimir Harkonnen sat up in the sleep suspensors of his private quarters. Beyond these quarters, and enclosing him like a multi-shelled egg, stretched the space frigate he had grounded on Arrakis. Here in his quarters, though, the ship's harsh metal was disguised with draperies, with fabric paddings and rare art objects.
It is a certainty. They are dead.
The Baron shifted his gross body in the suspensors, focused his attention on an Ebeline statue of a leaping boy in a niche across the room. Sleep faded from him. He straightened the padded suspensor beneath the fat folds of his neck, stared across the single glow globe of his bedchamber to the doorway where Captain Nefud stood blocked by the pentashield.
They're certainly dead, Baron.
The Baron noted the trace of Semuta dullness in Nefud's eyes. It was obvious the man had been deep within the drug's rapture when he received this report, and had stopped only to take the antidote before rushing here.
I have a full report.
Let him sweat a little, the Baron thought. One must always keep the tools of statecraft sharp and ready. Power and fear, sharp and ready.
Have you seen their bodies? Well?
My lord, they were seen to dive into a sandstorm. Winds over 800 kilometers. Nothing survives such a storm, my lord. Nothing. One of our own craft was destroyed in the pursuit.
The Baron stared at Nefud. noting the nervous twitch in the scissors line of the man's jaw muscles, the way the chin moved as Nefud swallowed.
You have seen the bodies?
My lord,
For what purpose do you come here rattling your armor? To tell me a thing is certain when it is not? Do you think I'll praise you for such stupidity? Give you another promotion?
Nefud's face went bone pale. Look at that chicken, the Baron thought. I'm surrounded by such useless clods. If I scattered sand over this creature and told him it was grain, he'd peck at it.
The man Idaho led us to them, then?
yes, my lord.
Look how he blurts out his answer, the Baron thought.
They were attempting to flee to the Fremen, eh?
Yes, my lord.
Is there more to this report?
The Imperial planetologist, Kynes, is involved, my lord. Idaho joined this Kynes under mysterious circumstances. I might even say suspicious circumstances.
So?
They, fled together to a place in the desert where it's apparent the boy and his mother were hiding. In the excitement of the chase, several of our groups were caught in a laser gun shield explosion.
How many did we lose?
I'm, not sure yet, my lord.
He's lying, the Baron thought. It must have been pretty bad.
The Imperial lackey, this Kynes. He was playing a double game, huh?
I'd stake my reputation on it, my lord.
His reputation, the Baron thought.
Have the man killed.
My lord, Kynes is the Imperial planetologist, His Majesty's own servant.
Make it look like an accident, then.
My lord, there was Sardaukar with our forces in the subjugation of this Fremen nest. They have Kynes in custody now.
Get him away from them. Say I wish to question him.
If they demur?
They will not if you handle it correctly.
Yes, my lord.
The man must die. He tried to help my enemies.
Nefud shifted from one foot to the other.
Well?
My lord, the Sardaukar have two persons in custody who might be of interest to you. They've got the Duke's Master of Assassins.
Hawat? Thufir Hawat?
I've seen the captive myself, my lord. 'Tis Hawat.
I'd not have believed it possible.
They say he was knocked out by a stunner, my lord. In the desert where he couldn't use his shield, he's virtually unharmed. If we can get our hands on him, he'll provide great sport.
This is a mentat you speak of. One doesn't waste a mentat. Has he spoken? What does he say of his defeat? Could he know the extent of... No.
He's spoken only enough, my lord, to reveal his belief that the Lady Jessica was his betrayer.
You're sure? It's the Lady Jessica who attracts his anger?
He said it in my presence, my lord.
Let him think she's alive, then.
But my lord,
Be quiet. I wish Howard treated kindly. He must be told nothing of the late Dr. Yui, his true betrayer. Let it be said that Dr. Yui died defending his duke. In a way, this may even be true. We will instead feed his suspicions against the Lady Jessica.
my lord, I don't.
The way to control and direct a mentat in that food is through his information. False information, false results.
Yes, my lord, but
Is Howard hungry? Thirsty?
my lord, Howard's still in the hands of the Sardaukar.
Yes, indeed, yes. But the Sardaukar will be as anxious to get information from Hawat as I am. I've noticed a thing about our allies, Nefud, that they're not very devious, politically. I do believe this is a deliberate thing. The Emperor wants it that way. I do believe it. You will remind the Sardaukar commander of my renown at obtaining information from reluctant subjects.
Yes, my lord.
You will tell the Sardaukar commander that I wish to question both Hawat and this Kynes at the same time, playing one off against the other. He can understand that much, I think.
Yes, my lord.
And once we have them in our hands,
My lord, the Sardaukar will want an observer with you during any questioning.
I'm sure we can produce an emergency to draw off any unwanted observers, Nefud.
I understand, my lord. That's when Kynes can have his accident.
Both Kynes and Hawat will have accidents then, Nefud. But only Kynes will have a real accident. It's Hawat I want. Ah, yes.
Nefud blinked, swallowed. He appeared about to ask a question, but remained silent.
Hawat will be given both food and drink, treated with kindness, with sympathy. In his water, you will administer the residual poison developed by the late Piter debris. And you will see that the antidote becomes a regular part of Hawat's diet from this point on, unless I say otherwise.
The antidote, yes, but...
Don't be dense, Nefud. The Duke almost killed me with that poison capsule tooth. The gas he exhaled into my presence deprived me of my most valuable mentat. Piter, I need a replacement.
Hawat?
Hawat.
But...
You're going to say Hawat's completely loyal to the Atreides. True, but the Atreides are dead. We will woo him. He must be convinced he's not to blame for the Duke's demise. It was all the doing of that Bene Gesserit witch. He had an inferior master, one whose reason was clouded by emotion. Mentats admire the ability to calculate without emotion, Nefud. We will woo the formidable Thufir Hawat.
Woo him? Yes, my lord.
Hawat unfortunately had a master whose resources were poor, one who could not elevate a mentat to the sublime peaks of reasoning that are a mentat's right. Hawat will see a certain element of truth in this. The Duke couldn't afford the most efficient spies to provide his mentat with the required information. Let us never deceive ourselves, Nefud. The truth is a powerful weapon. We know how we overwhelmed the Atreides. Hawat knows too. We did it with wealth.
With wealth? Yes, my lord.
We will woo Hawat. We will hide him from the Sardaukar, and we will hold in reserve the withdrawal of the antidote for the poison. There's no way of removing the residual poison. And Nefud, Hawat need never suspect. The antidote will not betray itself to a poison snooper. Hawat can scan his food as he pleases and detect no trace of poison.
Nefud's eyes opened wide with understanding.
The absence of a thing, this can be as deadly as the presence. The absence of air, the absence of water, the absence of anything else we're addicted to. You understand me, Nefud?
Yes, my lord.
Then get busy. Find the Sardaukar commander and set things in motion.
At once, my lord.
Nefud bowed, turned, and hurried away. Hawat by my side, the Baron thought. The Sardaukar will give him to me. If they suspect anything at all, it's that I wish to destroy the mentat, and this suspicion I'll confirm. The fools. One of the most formidable mentats in all history. A mentat trained to kill, and they'll toss him to me like some silly toy to be broken. I will show them what use can be made of such a toy. The Baron reached beneath a drapery beside his dispenser bed, pressed a button to summon his older nephew, Rabban. He sat back, smiling. And all the Atreides dead. The stupid guard captain had been right, of course. Certainly nothing survived in the path of a sandblast storm on Arrakis. Not an ornithopter or its occupants. The woman and the boy were dead. The bribes in the right places, the unthinkable expenditure to bring overwhelming military force down onto one planet, all the sly reports tailored for the Emperor's ears alone, all the careful scheming, were here at last coming to full fruition. Power and fear. Fear and power. The Baron could see the path ahead of him. One day, a Harkonnen would be Emperor. Not himself, and no spawn of his loins, but a Harkonnen. Not this Rabban he'd summoned, of course, but Rabban's younger brother, young Feyd-Rautha. There was a sharpness to the boy that the Baron enjoyed, a ferocity. A lovely boy, the Baron thought. A year or two more, say, by the time he's 17, I'll know for certain whether he's the tool that House Harkonnen requires to gain the throne.
Lord Baron.
The man who stood outside the doorfield of the Baron's bedchamber was low-built, gross of face and body, with the Harkonnen paternal line's narrow-set eyes and bulge of shoulders. There was yet some rigidity in his fat, but it was obvious to the eye that he'd come one day to the portable suspensors for carrying his excess weight. A muscle-minded tank brain, the Baron thought. No mentat, my nephew. Piter de Vries. but perhaps something more precisely devised for the task at hand. If I give him freedom to do it, he'll grind over everything in his path. Oh, how he'll be hated here on Arrakis.
My dear Raban,
The Baron released the door field, but pointedly kept his body shield at full strength, knowing that the shimmer of it would be visible above the bedside glow globe.
You summoned me?
Raban stepped into the room, flicked a glance past the air disturbance of the body shield, searched for a suspensor chair, found none.
stand closer where I can see you easily.
Raban advanced another step, thinking that the damnable old man had deliberately removed all chairs, forcing a visitor to stand.
The Atreides are dead, the last of them. That's why I summoned you here to Arrakis. This planet is again yours.
But I thought you were going to advance Pt.4 to the...
Piter too is dead.
Piter?
Piter.
The Baron reactivated the door field, blanked it against all energy penetration.
You finally tired of him, eh?
I will say a thing to you just this once. You insinuate that I obliterated Piter as one obliterates a trifle. Just like that, huh? I'm not so stupid, nephew. I will take it unkindly if ever again you suggest by word or action that I am so stupid.
Fear showed in the squinting of Raban's eyes. He knew within certain limits how far the old Baron would go against family, seldom to the point of death, unless there were outrageous profit or provocation in it. But family punishments could be painful.
Forgive me, my Lord Baron.
Raban lowered his eyes, as much to hide his own anger as to show subservience.
You do not fool me, Raban.
Raban kept his eyes lowered, swallowed.
I make a point. Never obliterate a man unthinkingly, the way an entire thief might do it through some due process of law. Always do it for an overriding purpose, and know your purpose.
But you obliterated the traitor Yui. I saw his body being carried out as I arrived last night.
Raban stared at his uncle, suddenly frightened by the sound of those words. But the Baron smiled.
I'm very careful about dangerous weapons. Dr. Yui was a traitor. He gave me the Duke. I suborned a doctor of the Suk school, the inner school. You hear, boy? But that's a wild sort of weapon to leave lying about. I didn't obliterate him casually.
Does the Emperor know you suborned a Suk doctor?
This was a penetrating question, the Baron thought. Have I misjudged this nephew?
The Emperor doesn't know it yet, but his Sardaukar are sure to report it to him. Before that happens, though, I'll have my own report in his hands, through Chom Company channels. I will explain that I lately discovered a doctor who pretended to the conditioning. A false doctor, you understand? Since everyone knows you cannot counter the conditioning of a Suk school, this will be accepted.
Ah, I see.
And the Baron thought, indeed, I hope you do see. I hope you do see how vital it is that this remains secret. The Baron suddenly wondered at himself. Why did I do that? Why did I boast to this fool nephew of mine, the nephew I must use and discard? The Baron felt anger at himself. He felt betrayed.
It must be kept secret. I understand.
I give you different instructions about Arrakis this time, nephew. When last you ruled this place, I held you in strong reign. This time, I have only one requirement.
My lord.
Income.
Income?
Have you any idea, Raban, how much we spent to bring such military force to bear on the Atreides? Do you have even the first inkling of how much the Guild charges for military transport?
Expensive, eh?
Expensive?
The Baron shot a fat arm toward Raban.
If you squeeze Arrakis for every cent it can give us for 60 years, you'll just barely repay us.
Raban opened his mouth, closed it, without speaking.
Expensive? The damnable Guild monopoly on space would have ruined us if I hadn't planned for this expense long ago. You should know, Raban, that we bore the entire brunt of it. We even paid for transport of the Sardaukar.
And not for the first time, the Baron wondered if there ever would come a day when the Guild might be circumvented. They were insidious, bleeding off just enough to keep the host from objecting until they had you in their fist, where they could force you to pay and pay and pay. Always the exorbitant demands rode upon military ventures. Hazard rates, the oily guild agents explained. And for every agent you managed to insert as a watchdog in the guild bank structure, they put 2 agents into your system. Insufferable.
Income, then.
The Baron lowered his arm, made a fist.
You must squeeze.
And I may do anything I wish as long as I squeeze.
Anything.
The cannons you brought, could I...
I'm removing them.
But you...
You won't need such toys. They were a special innovation and are now useless. We need the metal. They cannot go against the shield, Raban. They were merely the unexpected. It was predictable that the Duke's men would retreat into click caves on this abominable planet. Our cannon merely sealed them in.
The Fremen don't use shields.
You may keep some laser guns if you wish.
Yes, my lord. And I have a free hand.
As long as you squeeze.
I understand perfectly.
You understand nothing perfectly. Let us have that clear at the outset. What you do understand is how to carry out my orders. Has it occurred to you, nephew, that there are at least 5 million persons on this planet?
Does my lord forget that I was his regent Siradar here before? And if my lord will forgive me, his estimate may be low. It's difficult to count a population scattered among sinks and pans the way they are here. And when you consider the Fremen of...
The Fremen aren't worth considering.
Forgive me, my lord, but the Sardaukar believe otherwise.
You know something?
My lord had retired when I arrived last night. I took the liberty of contacting some of my lieutenants from before. They've been acting as guides to the Sardaukar. They report that a Fremen band ambushed a Sardaukar force somewhere southeast of here and wiped it out.
Wiped out a Sardaukar force?
Yes, my lord.
Impossible. Fremen defeating Sardaukar?
I repeat only what was reported to me. It is said this Fremen force already had captured the Duke's redoubtable Thufir Hawat. I believe the report. You've no idea what a problem the Fremen were.
Perhaps, but these weren't Fremen your lieutenant saw. They must have been Atreides men trained by Hawat and disguised as Fremen. It's the only possible answer.
Well, the Sardaukar think they were Fremen. The Sardaukar have already launched a program to wipe out all Fremen.
Good.
But
it'll keep the Sardaukar occupied. And we'll soon have Hawat. I know it. I can feel it. Oh, this has been a day. The Sardaukar off hunting a few useless desert bands while we get the real prize.
My lord, I've always felt that we underestimated the Fremen, both in numbers and in...
Ignore them, boy. They're rabble. It's the populous towns, cities, and villages that concern us. A great many people there, eh?
A great many, my lord.
They worry me, Raban.
Worry you?
Oh, 90% of them are of no concern, but there are always a few houses minor and so on. People of ambition who might try a dangerous thing. If one of them should get off Arrakis with an unpleasant story about what happened here, I'd be most displeased. Have you any idea how displeased I'd be?
Raban swallowed.
You must take immediate measures to hold a hostage from each house minor. As far as anyone off Arrakis must learn, this was straightforward house-to-house battle. The Sardaukar had no part in it, you understand? The Duke was offered the usual quarter in exile, but he died in an unfortunate accident before he could accept. He was about to accept, though. That is the story. And any rumor that there were Sardaukar here, it must be laughed at.
As the Emperor wishes it.
As the Emperor wishes it.
What about the smugglers?
No one believes smugglers, Raban. They are tolerated but not believed. At any rate, you'll be spreading some bribes in that quarter, and taking other measures which I'm sure you can think of.
Yes, my lord.
2 things from Arrakis, then, Raban. Income and a merciless fist. You must show no mercy here. Think of these clods as what they are, slaves envious of their masters and waiting only the opportunity to rebel. Not the slightest vestige of pity or mercy must you show them.
Can one exterminate an entire planet?
Exterminate? Who said anything about exterminating?
Well, I presumed you were going to bring in new stock, and
I said squeeze, nephew, not exterminate. Don't waste the population. Merely drive them into utter submission. You must be the carnivore, my boy.
The Baron smiled, a baby's expression in the dimpled fat face.
A carnivore never stops. Show no mercy, never stop. Mercy is a chimera. It can be defeated by the stomach rumbling its hunger, by the throat crying its thirst. You must always be hungry and thirsty.
The Baron caressed his bulges beneath the suspensors.
Like me.
I see, my lord.
Raban swung his gaze left and right.
It's all clear then, nephew?
Except for one thing, Uncle. The planetologist, Kynes.
Ah, yes.
Let me load a little bit more in here and not do it there.
He's the Emperor's man, my lord. He can come and go as he pleases. And he's very close to the Fremen. Married one.
Kynes will be dead by tomorrow's nightfall.
That's dangerous work, Uncle. Killing an Imperial servant.
How do you think I've come this far this quickly? Besides, you need never have feared Kynes would leave Arrakis. You're forgetting that he's addicted to the spice.
Of course.
Those who know will do nothing to endanger their supply. Kynes certainly must know.
I forgot.
They stared at each other in silence.
Incidentally, you will make my own supply one of your first concerns. I have quite a stockpile of private stuff, but that suicide raid by the Duke's men got most of what we'd stored for sale.
Yes, my lord.
Raban nodded, and the Baron brightened.
Now, tomorrow morning you will assemble what remains of organization here, and you'll say to them, "Our sublime Padishah Emperor has charged me to take possession of this planet and end all dispute."
I understand, my lord.
This time I'm sure you do. We will discuss it in more detail tomorrow. Now leave me to finish my sleep.
The Baron deactivated his door field, watched his nephew out of sight. A tank brain, the Baron thought. Muscle-minded tank brain. They will be bloody pulp here when he's through with them. Then, when I send in Fade Router to take the load off them, they'll cheer their rescuer. Beloved Fade Router, benign Fade Router, the compassionate one who saves them from a beast. Fade Router, a man to follow and die for. The boy will know by that time how to oppress with impunity. I'm sure he's the one we need. He'll learn. And such a lovely body. Really a lovely boy.
At the age of 15, he had already learned silence. From A Child's History of Muad'Dib by the Princess Irulan.
As Paul fought the Thopter's controls, he grew aware that he was sorting out the interwoven form forces, his more than mentat awareness computing on the basis of fractional minutiae. He felt dust fronts, billowings, mixings of turbulence, an occasional vortex. The cabin interior was an angry box lighted by the green radiance of instrument dials. The tan flow of dust outside appeared featureless, but his inner sense began to see through the curtain. I must find the right vortex, he thought. For a long time now he had sensed the storm's power diminishing, but still it shook them. He waited out another turbulence. The vortex began as an abrupt billowing that rattled the entire ship. Paul defied all fear to bank the Thopter left. Jessica saw the maneuver on the altitude globe. "Paul!" she screamed. The vortex turned them, twisting, tipping. It lifted the Thopter like a chip on a geyser, spewed them up and out, a winged speck within a core of winding dust lighted by the second moon. Paul looked down, saw the dust-defined pillar of hot wind that had disgorged them, saw the dying storm trailing away like a dry river into the desert, moon-grey motion growing smaller and smaller below as they rode the updraft. "We're out of it," Jessica whispered. Paul turned their craft away from the dust in swooping rhythm while he scanned the night sky. "We've given them the slip," he said. Jessica felt her heart pounding. She forced herself to calmness, looked at the diminishing storm. Her time sense said they had ridden within that compounding of elemental forces almost 4 hours, but part of her mind computed the passage as a lifetime. She felt reborn. It was like the litany, she thought. We faced it and did not resist. The storm passed through us and around us. It's gone, but we remain. "I don't like the sound of our wing motion," Paul said. "We suffered some damage in there." He felt the grating, injured flight through his hands on the controls. They were out of the storm, but still not out into the full view of his prescient vision. Yet they had escaped, and Paul sensed himself trembling on the verge of a revelation. He shivered.
Salut Chris, j'espère que tu vas bien.
He shivered. The sensation was magnetic and terrifying, and he found himself caught on the question of what caused this trembling awareness. Part of it, he felt, was the spice-saturated diet of Arrakis, but he thought part of it could be the litany, as though the words had a power of their own. I shall not fear. Cause and effect. He was alive despite malignant forces, and he felt himself poised on a brink of self-awareness that could not have been without the litany's magic. Words from the Orange Catholic Bible rang through his memory. What senses do we lack, that we cannot see or hear another world all around us? There's rock all around, Jessica said. Paul, focused on the Thopter's launching, shook his head to clear it. He looked where his mother pointed, saw uplifting rock shapes black on the sand ahead and to the right. He felt wind around his ankles, a stirring of dust in the cabin. There was a hole somewhere. More of the storm's doing. Better set us down on sand, Jessica said. The wings might not take full break. He nodded toward a place ahead where sand-blasted ridges lifted into moonlights above the dunes. I'll set us down near those rocks. Check your safety harness. She obeyed, thinking, we've water and still suits. If we can find food, we can survive a long time on this desert. Fremen live here. What they can do, we can do. Run for those rocks the instant we're stopped, Paul said. I'll take the pack. Run for... She fell silent, nodded. Worms. Our friends, the worms, he corrected her. They'll get this Thopter. There'll be no evidence of where we landed. How direct his thinking, she thought. They glided lower, lower. There came a rushing sense of motion to their passage, blurred shadows of dunes, rocks lifting like islands. The Thopter touched a dune top with a soft lurch, skipped a sand valley, touched another dune. He's killing our speed against the sand, Jessica thought, and permitted herself to admire his competence. Brace yourself, Paul warned. He pulled back on the wing brakes, gently at first, then harder and harder. He felt them cup the air, their aspect ratio dropping faster and faster. Wind screamed through the lapped coverts and primaries of the wing's leaves. Abruptly, with only the faintest lurch of warning, the left wing, weakened by the storm, twisted upward and in, slamming across the side of the Thopter. The craft skidded across a dune top, twisting to the left. It tumbled down the opposite face to bury its nose in the next dune amid a cascade of sand. They lay, stopped on the broken wing side, the right wing pointing toward the stars. Paul jerked off his safety harness, hurled himself upward across his mother, wrenching the door open. Sand poured around them into the cabin, bringing a dry smell of burned flint. He grabbed the pack from the rear, saw that his mother was free of her harness. She stepped up onto the side of the right-hand seat and out onto the Thopter's metal skin. Paul followed, dragging the pack by its straps. Run! He ordered. He pointed up the dune face and beyond it, where they could see a rock tower undercut by sand-blast winds. Jessica leaped off the Thopter and ran, scrambling and sliding up the dune. She heard Paul's panting progress behind. They came out onto a sand ridge that curved away toward the rocks. "Follow the ridge," Paul ordered. "It'll be faster." They slogged toward the rocks, sand gripping their feet. A new sound began to impress itself on them, a muted whisper, a hissing, an abrasive slithering. "Worm," Paul said. It grew louder. "Faster!" Paul gasped. The first rock shingle, like a beach slanting from the sand, lay no more than 10 meters ahead when they heard metal crunch and shatter behind them. Paul shifted his pack to his right arm, holding it by the straps. It slapped his side as he ran. He took his mother's arm with his other hand. They scrambled onto the lifting rock, up a pebble-littered surface, through a twisted, wind-carved channel. Breath came dry and gasping in their throats. "I can't run any farther," Jessica panted. Paul stopped, pressed her into a gut of rock, turned and looked down onto the desert. A mound in motion ran parallel to their rock island. Moonlit ripples, sand waves, a cresting burrow almost level with Paul's eyes at a distance of about a kilometer. The flattened dunes of its track curved once, a short loop crossing the patch of desert where they had abandoned their wrecked ornithopter. Where the worm had been, there was no sign of the aircraft. The burrow mound moved outward into the desert, coursed back across its own path, questing. "It's bigger than a guild spaceship," Paul whispered. "I was told worms grew large in the deep desert, but I didn't realize how big." "Nor I," Jessica breathed. Again the thing turned out away from the rocks, sped now with a curving track toward the horizon. They listened until the sound of its passage was lost in gentle sand stirrings around them. Paul took a deep breath, looked up at the moon-frosted escarpment, and quoted from the Kitab al-Ibar. "Travel by night and rest in black shade through the day." He looked at his mother. "We still have a few hours of night. Can you go on?" "In a moment." Paul stepped out onto the rock shingle, shouldered the pack and adjusted its straps. He stood a moment with a paracompass in his hands. "Whenever you're ready," he said. She pushed herself away from the rock, feeling her strength return. "Which direction?" "Where this ridge leads," he pointed. "Deep into the desert," she said. "The Fremen desert," Paul whispered. And he paused, shaken by the remembered high-relief imagery of a prescient vision he had experienced on Caladan. He had seen this desert, but the set of the vision had been subtly different, like an optical image that had disappeared into his consciousness, been absorbed by memory, and now failed of perfect registry when projected onto the real scene. The vision appeared to have shifted and approached him from a different angle while he remained motionless. Idaho was with us in the vision, he remembered. But now Idaho is dead. "Do you see a way to go?" Jessica asked, mistaking his hesitation. "No," he said, "but we'll go anyway." He settled his shoulders more firmly in the pack, struck out up a sand-carved channel in the rock. The channel opened onto a moonlit floor of rock with benched ledges climbing away to the south. Paul headed for the first ledge, clambered onto it. Jessica followed. She noted presently how their passage became a matter of the immediate and particular. The sand pockets between rocks where their steps were slowed, the wind-carved ridge that cut their hands, the obstruction that forced a choice, go over or go around. The terrain enforced its own rhythms. They spoke only when necessary, and then with the hoarse voices of their exertion. "Careful here. This ledge is slippery with sand. Watch you don't hit your head against this overhang. Stay below this ridge. The moon's at our backs, and it'd show our movement to anyone out there." Paul stopped in a bight of rock, leaned the pack against a narrow ledge. Jessica leaned beside him, thankful for the moment of rest. She heard Paul pulling at his still-suit tube, sipped her own reclaimed water. It tasted brackish, and she remembered the waters of Caladan, a tall fountain enclosing a curve of sky, such a richness of moisture that it hadn't been noticed for itself, only for its shape, or its reflection, or its sound as she stopped beside it. To stop, she thought, to rest, truly rest. It occurred to her that mercy was the ability to stop, if only for a moment. There was no mercy where there could be no stopping. Paul pushed away from the rock ledge, turned, and climbed over a sloping surface. Jessica followed with a sigh. They slid down onto a wide shelf that led around a sheer rock face. Again, they fell into the disjointed rhythm of movement across this broken land. Jessica felt that the night was dominated by degrees of smallness in substances beneath their feet and hands. Boulders, or pea gravel, or flaked rock, or pea sand, or sand itself, or grit, or dust, or gossamer powder. The powder clogged nose filters and had blown out. Pea sand and pea gravel rolled on a hard surface and could spill the unwary. Rock flakes cut, and the omnipresent sand patches dragged against their feet. Paul stopped abruptly on a rock shelf, steadied his mother as she stumbled into him. He was pointing left, and she looked along his arm to see that they stood atop a cliff with the desert stretched out like a static ocean some 200 meters below. It lay there full of moon-silvered waves, shadows of angles that lapsed into curves, and, in the distance, lifted to the misty grey blur of another escarpment. "Open desert," she said. "A wide place to cross," Paul said, and his voice was muffled by the filter trap across his face. Jessica glanced left and right. Nothing but sand below. Paul stared straight ahead across the open dunes, watching the movement of shadows in the moon's passage. "About 3 or 4 kilometers across," he said. "Worms?" she said. "Sure to be." She focused on her weariness, the muscle ache that dulled her senses. "Shall we rest and eat?" Paul slipped out of the pack, sat down, and leaned against it. Jessica supported herself by a hand on his shoulder as she sank to the rock beside him. She felt Paul turn as she settled herself, heard him scrabbling in the pack. "Here," he said. His hand felt dry against hers as he pressed 2 energy capsules into her palm. She swallowed them with a grudging spit of water from her still-suit tube. "Drink all your water," Paul said. "Axiom, the best place to conserve your water is in your body. It keeps your energy up. You're stronger. Trust your still-suit." She obeyed, drained her catch pockets, feeling energy return. She thought then how peaceful it was here in this moment of their tightness. And she recalled once hearing the minstrel warrior Gurney Halleck say, "Better a dry morsel and quietness therewith than a house full of sacrifice and strife." Jessica repeated the words to Paul. "That was Gurney," he said. She caught the tone of his voice, the way he spoke as of someone dead, thought, and well, poor Gurney might be dead. The Atreides forces were either dead or captive, or lost like themselves in this waterless void. "Gurney always had the right quotation," Paul said. "I can hear him now. And I will make the rivers dry, and sell the land into the hand of the wicked. And I will make the land waste and all that is therein by the hand of strangers." Jessica closed her eyes, found herself moved close to tears by the pathos in her son's voice. Presently, Paul said, "How do you feel?" She recognized that his question was directed at her pregnancy, said, "Your sister won't be born for many months yet. I still feel physically adequate." And she thought, how stiffly formal I speak to my own son. Then, because it was the Bene Gesserit way to seek within for the answer to such an oddity, she searched and found the source of her formality. "I'm afraid of my son. I fear his strangeness. I fear what he may see ahead of us, what he may tell me." Paul pulled his hood down over his eyes, listened to the bug-hustling sounds of the night. His lungs were charged with his own silence. His nose itched. He rubbed it, removed the filter, and grew conscious of the rich smell of cinnamon. "There's melange spice nearby," he said. An Ido wind feathered Paul's cheeks, ruffled the folds of his burnous. But this wind carried no threat of storm. Already he could sense the difference. "Dawn soon," he said. Jessica nodded. "There's a way to get safely across that open sand," Paul said. "The Fremen do it." "The worms?" "If we were to plant a thumper from our Frem kit back in the rocks here," Paul said, "it'd keep a worm occupied for a time." She glanced at the stretch of moonlighted desert between them and the other escarpment. 4 kilometers worth of time? Perhaps. And if we crossed there, making only natural sounds, the kind that don't attract the worms. Paul studied the open desert, questing in his prescient memory, probing the mysterious allusions to thumpers and maker hooks in the Frem kit manual that had come with their escape pack. He found it odd that all he sensed was pervasive terror at thought of the worms. He knew, as though it lay just at the edge of his awareness, that the worms were to be respected and not feared. If... He shook his head. "It'd have to be sounds without rhythm," Jessica said. "What?" "Oh, yes. If we broke our steps, the sand itself must shift down at times. Worms can't investigate every little sound. We should be fully rested before we try it, though." He looked across at that other rock wall, seeing the passage of time in the vertical moon shadows there. "It'll be dawn within the hour." "Where'll we spend the day?" she asked. Paul turned left, pointed. "The cliff curves back north over there. You can see by the way it's wind cut, that's the windward face. There'll be crevices there, deep ones." "Had we better get started?" she asked. He stood, helped her to her feet.
Nice and charged up.
"Are you rested enough for a climb down? I want to get as close as possible to the desert floor before we camp." "Enough." She nodded for him to lead the way. He hesitated, then lifted the pack, settled it onto his shoulders, and turned along the cliff. If only we had suspensors, Jessica thought. It would be such a simple matter to jump down there. But perhaps suspensors are another thing to avoid in the open desert. Maybe they attract the worms the way a shield does. They came to a series of shelves dropping down, and beyond them saw a fissure with its ledge outlined by moon shadow leading along the vestibule. Paul led the way down, moving cautiously but hurrying, because it was obvious the moonlight could not last much longer. They wound down into a world of deeper and deeper shadows. Hints of rock shape climbed to the stars around them. The fissure narrowed to some 10 meters width at the brink of a dim, grey sand slope that slanted downward into darkness. "Can we go down?" Jessica whispered. "I think so." He tested the surface with one foot. "We can slide down," he said. "I'll go first. Wait until you hear me stop." "Careful," she said. He stepped onto the slope and slid and slipped down its soft surface onto an almost level floor of packed sand. The place was deep within the rock walls. There came the sound of sand sliding behind him. He tried to see up the slope in the darkness, was almost knocked over by the cascade. It trailed away to silence. "Mother?" he said. There was no answer. "Mother?" He dropped the pack, hurled himself up the slope, scrambling, digging, throwing sand like a wild man. "Mother!" he gasped. "Mother, where are you?" Another cascade of sand swept down on him, burying him to the hips. He wrenched himself out of it. "She's been caught in the landslide," he thought, "buried in it. I must be calm and work this out carefully. She won't smother immediately. She'll compose herself in Bindu suspension to reduce her oxygen needs. She knows I'll dig for her." In the Bene Gesserit way she had taught him, Paul stilled the savage beating of his heart, set his mind as a blank slate upon which the past few moments could write themselves. Every partial shift and twist of the slide replayed itself in his memory, moving with an interior stateliness that contrasted with the fractional second of real time required for the total recall. Presently, Paul moved slantwise up the slope, probing cautiously until he found the wall of the fissure, an out-curve of rock there. He began to dig, moving the sand with care not to dislodge another slide. A piece of fabric came under his hands. He followed it, found an arm. Gently, he traced the arm, exposed her face. "Do you hear me?" he whispered. No answer. He dug faster, freed her shoulders. She was limp beneath his hands, but he detected a slow heartbeat. "Bindu suspension," he told himself. He cleared the sand away to her waist, draped her arms over his shoulders and pulled downslope, slowly at first, then dragging her as fast as he could, feeling the sand give way above. Faster and faster he pulled her, gasping with the effort, fighting to keep his balance. He was out on the hard-packed floor of the fissure then, swinging her to his shoulder and breaking into a staggering run, as the entire sand slope came down with a loud hiss that echoed and was magnified within the rock walls. He stopped at the end of the fissure, where it looked out on the desert's marching dunes some 30 meters below. Gently, he lowered her to the sand, uttered the word to bring her out of the catalepsis. She awakened slowly, taking deeper and deeper breaths. "I knew you'd find me," she whispered. He looked back up the fissure. "It might have been kinder if I hadn't." "Paul!" "I lost the pack," he said. "It's buried under 100 tons of sand, at least. Everything? The spare water, the still tent, everything that counts." He touched a pocket. "I still have the paracompass." He fumbled at the waist sash. "Knife and binoculars. We can get a good look around the place where we'll die." In that instant, the sun lifted above the horizon somewhere to the left, beyond the end of the fissure. Colors blinked in the sand out on the open desert. A chorus of birds held forth their songs from hidden places among the rocks. But Jessica had eyes only for the despair in Paul's face. She edged her voice with scorn, said, "Is this the way you were taught? Don't you understand?" he asked. "Everything we need to survive in this place is under that sand." "You found me," she said. And now her voice was soft, reasonable. Paul squatted back on his heels. Presently, he looked up the fissure at the new slope, studying it, marking the looseness of the sand. "If we could immobilize a small area of that slope and the upper face of a hole dug into the sand, we might be able to put down a shaft to the pack. Water might do it, but we don't have enough water for—" He broke off, then foam. Jessica held herself to stillness lest she disturb the hyper-functioning of his mind. Paul looked out at the open dunes, searching with his nostrils as well as his eyes, finding the direction and then centering his attention on a darkened patch of sand below them. "Spice," he said. "Its essence highly alkaline. And I have the paracompass. Its power pack is acid base." Jessica sat up straight against the rock. Paul ignored her, leaping to his feet, and was off down the wind-compacted surface that spilled from the end of the fissure to the desert's floor. She watched the way he walked, breaking his stride. Step, pause. Step, step, slide, pause. There was no rhythm to it that might tell a marauding worm something not of the desert moved here. Paul reached the spice patch, shoveled a mound of it into a fold of his robe, returned to the fissure. He spilled the spice onto the sand in front of Jessica, squatted and began dismantling the paracompass, using the point of his knife. The compass face came off. He removed his sash, spread the compass parts on it, lifted out the power pack. The dial mechanism came out next, leaving an empty, dished compartment in the instrument. "You'll need water," Jessica said. Paul took the catch tube from his neck, sucked up a mouthful, expelled it into the dished compartment. "If this fails, that's water wasted," Jessica thought. "But it won't matter then, anyway." With his knife, Paul cut open the power pack, spilled its crystals into the water. They foamed slightly, subsided. Jessica's eyes caught motion above them. She looked up to see a line of hawks along the rim of the fissure. They perched there, staring down at the open water. Great Mother, she thought. They can sense water even at that distance. Paul had the cover back on the Paracampus, leaving off the reset button, which gave a small hole into the liquid. Taking the reworked instrument in one hand, a handful of spice in the other, Paul went back up the fissure, studying the lay of the slope. His robe billowed gently without the sash to hold it. He waded part way up the slope, kicking off the sand rivulets, spurts of dust. Presently he stopped, pressed a pinch of the spice into the Paracampus, shook the instrument case. Green foam boiled out of the hole where the reset button had been. Paul aimed it at the slope, spread a low dike there, began kicking away the sand beneath it, immobilizing the opened face with more foam. Jessica moved to a position below him, called out, "May I help?" "Come up and dig," he said. "We've about 3 meters to go. It's going to be a near thing." As he spoke, the foam stopped billowing from the instrument. "Quickly," Paul said. "No telling how long this foam will hold the sand." Jessica scrambled up beside Paul as he sifted another pinch of spice into the hole, shook the Paracampus case. Again, foam boiled from it. As Paul directed the foam barrier, Jessica dug with her hands, hurling the sand down the slope. "How deep?" she panted. "About 3 meters," he said, "but I can only approximate the position. We may have to widen this hole." He moved a step aside, slipping in loose sand. "Slant your digging backward. Don't go straight down." Jessica obeyed. Slowly the hole went down, reaching a level even with the floor of the basin, and still no sign of the pack. Could I have miscalculated? Paul asked himself. I'm the one that panicked originally and caused this mistake. Has that warped my ability? He looked at the Paracampus. Less than 2 ounces of the acid infusion remained. Jessica straightened in the hole, rubbed a foam-stained hand across her cheek. Her eyes met Paul's. "The upper face," Paul said. "Gently now." He added another pinch of spice to the container, sent the foam boiling around Jessica's hands as she began cutting a vertical face in the upper slant of the hole. On the second pass, her hands encountered something hard. Slowly, she worked out a length of strap with a plastic buckle. "Don't move any more of it," Paul said, and his voice was almost a whisper. "We're out of foam." Jessica held the strap in one hand, looked up at him. Paul threw the empty Paracampus down onto the floor of the basin, said, "Give me your other hand. Now listen carefully. I'm going to pull you to the side and downhill. Don't let go of that strap. We won't get much more spill from the top. This slope has stabilized itself. All I'm going to aim for is to keep your head free of the sand. Once that hole's filled, we can dig you out and pull up the pack." "I understand," she said. "Ready?" "Ready." She tensed her fingers on the strap. With one surge, Paul had her half out of the hole, holding her head up as the foam barrier gave way and sand spilled down. When it had subsided, Jessica remained buried to the waist, her left arm and shoulder still under the sand, her chin protected on a fold of Paul's robe. Her shoulder ached from the strain put on it. "I still have the strap," she said. Slowly, Paul worked his hand into the sand beside her, found the strap. "Together," he said. "Steady pressure. We mustn't break it." More sand spilled down as they worked the pack up. When the strap cleared the surface, Paul stopped, freed his mother from the sand. Together then they pulled the pack downslope and out of its trap. In a few minutes they stood on the floor of the fissure, holding the pack between them. Paul looked at his mother. Foam strained her face, her robe. Sand was caked to her where the foam had dried. She looked as though she had been a target for balls of wet, green sand. You look a mess, he said. You're not so pretty yourself, she said. They started to laugh, then sobered. That shouldn't have happened, Paul said. I was careless. She shrugged, feeling caked sand fall away from her robe. I'll put up the tent, he said. Better slip off that robe and shake it out. He turned away, taking the pack. Jessica nodded, suddenly too tired to answer. There's anchor holes in the rock, Paul said. Someone's tented here before. Why not? She thought, as she brushed at her robe. This was a likely place, deep in rock walls and facing another cliff some 4 kilometers away, far enough above the desert to avoid worms, but close enough for easy access before a crossing. She turned, seeing that Paul had the tent up, its rib-domed hemisphere blending with the rock walls of the fissure. Paul stepped past her, lifting his binoculars. He adjusted their internal pressure with a quick twist, focused the oil lenses on the other cliff, lifting golden tan in morning light across open sand. Jessica watched as he studied that apocalyptic landscape, his eyes probing into sand rivers and canyons. There are growing things over there, he said. Jessica found the spare binoculars in the pack beside the tent, moved up beside Paul. There, he said, holding the binoculars with one hand and pointing with the other. She looked where he pointed. Saguaro, she said. Scrawny stuff. There may be people nearby, Paul said. That could be the remains of a botanical testing station, she warned. This is pretty far south into the desert, he said. He lowered his binoculars, rubbed beneath his filter baffle, feeling how dry and chapped his lips were, sensing the dusty taste of thirst in his mouth. This has the feeling of a Fremen place, he said. Are we certain the Fremen will be friendly? She asked. Kynes promised their help. But there's desperation in the people of this desert, she thought. I felt some of it myself today. Desperate people might kill us for our water. She closed her eyes and, against this wasteland, conjured in her mind a scene from Caladan. There had been a vacation trip once on Caladan, she and the Duke Leto before Paul's birth. They'd flown over the southern jungles, above the weed-wild shouting leaves and rice paddies of the deltas. And they had seen the ant lines in the greenery, man gangs carrying their loads on suspensor-buoyed shoulder poles. And in the sea reaches there had been the white petals of trimaran downs. All of it gone. Jessica opened her eyes to the desert stillness, to the mounting warmth of the day. Restless heat devils were beginning to set the air a-quiver out on the open sand. The other rock face across from them was like a thing seen through cheap glass. A spill of sand spread its brief curtain across the open end of the fissure. The sand hissed down, loosed by puffs of morning breeze, by the hawks that were beginning to lift away from the cliff top. When the sandfall was gone, she still heard it hissing. It grew louder, a sound that, once heard, was never forgotten. Wow, Paul whispered. It came from their right with an uncaring majesty that could not be ignored. A twisting, burrow mound of sand cut through the dunes within their field of vision. The mound lifted in front, dusting away like a bow wave in water. Then it was gone, coursing off to the left. The sound diminished, died. I've seen space frigates that were smaller, Paul whispered. She nodded, continuing to stare across the desert. Where the worm had passed, there remained that tantalizing gap. It flowed bitterly endless before them, beckoning beneath its horizontal collapse of skyline. When we've rested, Jessica said, we should continue with your lesson. He suppressed a sudden anger, said, Mother, don't you think we could do without... Today you panicked, she said. You know your mind and Bindu nervature perhaps better than I do, but you've much yet to learn about your body's prana musculature. The body does things of itself sometimes, Paul, and I can teach you about this. You must learn to control every muscle, every fiber of your body. You need review of the hands, We'll start with finger muscles, palm tendons, and tip sensitivity. She turned away. Come into the tent now. He flexed the fingers of his left hand, watching her crawl through the sphincter valve, knowing that he could not deflect her from this determination, that he must agree. Whatever has been done to me, I've been a party to it, he thought. Review of the hand. He looked at his hand. How inadequate it appeared when measured against such creatures as that worm.
We came from Caladan, a paradise world for our form of life. There existed no need on Caladan to build a physical paradise, or a paradise of the mind. We could see the actuality all around us. And the price we paid was the price men have always paid for achieving a paradise in this life. We went soft. We lost our edge. From Muad'Dib, Conversations by the Princess Irulan.
Oh, you're the great Gurney Halleck, the man said. Halleck stood staring across the round cavern office at the smuggler seated behind a metal desk. The man wore Fremen robes and had the half-tint blue eyes that told of off-planet foods in his diet. The office duplicated a space frigate's master control center, communications and view screens along a 30-degree arc of wall, remote arming and firing banks adjoining, and the desk formed as a wall projection, part of the remaining curve. I am Stephen Tuick, son of Esmar Tuick, the smuggler said. Then you're the one I owe thanks for the help we've received, Halleck said. Ah, gratitude, the smuggler said. Sit down. A ship-type bucket seat emerged from the wall beside the screens, and Halleck sank onto it with a sigh, feeling his weariness. He could see his own reflection now in the dark surface beside the smuggler, and scowled at the lines of fatigue in his lumpy face. The ink vine scar along his jaw writhed with the scowl. Halleck turned from his reflection, stared at Tuick. He saw the family resemblance in the smuggler now, the father's heavy, overhanging eyebrows and rock planes of cheeks and nose. Your men tell me your father is dead, killed by the Harkonnens, Halleck said. By the Harkonnens, or by a traitor among your people, Tuick said. Anger overcame part of Halleck's fatigue. He straightened, said, Can you name the traitor? We are not sure. Thufir Hawat suspected the Lady Jessica. Ah, a Bene Gesserit witch, perhaps. But Hawat is now a Harkonnen captive. I heard. Halleck took a deep breath. It appears we've a deal more killing ahead of us. We will do nothing to attract attention to us, Tuick said. Halleck stiffened. But you and those of your men we've saved are welcome to sanctuary among us, Tuick said. You speak of gratitude. Very well. Work off your debt to us. We can always use good men. We'll destroy you out of hand, though, if you make the slightest open move against the Harkonnens. But they killed your father, men, perhaps? And if so, I'll give you my father's answer to those who act without thinking. A stone is heavy, and the sand is weighty, but a fool's wrath is heavier than them both. You mean to do nothing about it, then? Halleck sneered. You did not hear me say that. I merely say I will protect our contract with the Guild. The Guild requires that we play a circumspect game. There are other ways of destroying a foe. Indeed. If you've a mind to seek out the witch, have at it. I warn you that you are probably too late, and we doubt she's the one you want anyway. Hawat made few mistakes. He allowed himself to fall into Harkonnen hands. You think he's the traitor? Tuick shrugged. This is academic. We think the witch is dead. At least the Harkonnens believe it. You seem to know a great deal about the Harkonnens. Hints and suggestions, rumors and hunches. We are 74 men, Halleck said. If you seriously wish us to enlist with you, you must believe our Duke is dead. His body has been seen. And the boy too? Young Master Paul? Halleck tried to swallow, found a lump in his throat. According to the last word we had, he was lost with his mother in the desert storm. Likely not even their bones will ever be found. But the witch is dead then. All dead. Tuik nodded. And Beast Raban, so they say, will sit once more in the seat of power here on Dune. The Count Raban of Lankavale? Yes. It took Halleck a moment to put down the upsurge of rage that threatened to overcome him. He spoke with panting breath. I've a score of my own against Raban. I owe him for the lives of my family. He rubbed at the scar along his jaw. And for this. One does not risk everything to settle a score prematurely, Tuik said. He frowned, watching the play of muscles along Halleck's jaw, the sudden withdrawal in the man's shed-lidded eyes. I know. Halleck took a deep breath. You and your men can work out your passage off Arrakis by serving with us. There are many places to... I release my men from any bond to me. They can choose for themselves. With Raban here, I stay. In your mood, I'm not sure we want you to stay. Halleck stared at the smuggler. You doubt my word? No. You saved me from the Harkonnens. I gave loyalty to the Duke Leto for no greater reason. I'll stay on Arrakis, with you, or with the Fremen. Whether a thought is spoken or not, it is a real thing, and it has power, Tuik said. You might find the line between life and death among the Fremen to be too sharp and quick. Halleck closed his eyes briefly, feeling the weariness surge up in him. Where is the Lord who led us through the land of deserts and of pits? He murmured. Move slowly, and the day of your revenge will come, Tuik said. Speed is a device of Shaitan. Cool your sorrow.
Yeah.
We've the diversions for it. 3 things there are that ease the heart. Water, green grass, and the beauty of woman. Halleck opened his eyes.
Had to keep refreshing
I would
my
prefer the blood of
my
Raban
feet.
Harkonnen flowing about my feet. He stared at Tuik. Do you think that day will come? I have little to do with how you'll meet tomorrow, Gurney Halleck. I can only help you meet today. And I'll accept that help and stay until the day you tell me to revenge your father and all the others who listen to me, fighting man, Rick said. He leaned forward over his desk, his shoulders level with his ears, eyes intent. The smuggler's face was suddenly like weathered stone. My father's water, I'll buy that back myself, with my own blade. Halleck stared back at Tuik. In that moment, the smuggler reminded him of Duke Leto, a leader of men, courageous, secure in his own position and his own course. He was like the Duke before Arrakis. Do you wish my blade beside you? Halleck asked. Tuik sat back, relaxed, studying Halleck silently. Do you think of me as fighting man? Halleck pressed. You're the only one of the Duke's lieutenants to escape, Tuik said. Your enemy was overwhelming, yet you rolled with him. You defeated him the way we defeat Arrakis. Eh? We live on sufferance down here, Gurney Halleck, Tuik said. Arrakis is our enemy. One enemy at a time, is that it? That's it. Is that the way the Fremen make out? Perhaps. You said I might find life with the Fremen too tough. They live in the desert, in the open. Is that why? Who knows where the Fremen live? For us, the Central Plateau is a no-man's land. But I wish to talk more about... I'm told that the Ghoul seldom routes spice lighters in over the desert, Halleck said. But there are rumors that you can see bits of greenery here and there, if you know where to look. Rumors, Tuik sneered. Do you wish to choose now between me and the Fremen? We have a measure of security, our own sietch carved out of the rock, our own hidden basins. We live the lives of civilized men. The Fremen are a few ragged bands that we use as spice hunters. But they can kill Harkonnens. And do you wish to know the result? Even now they are being hunted down like animals with laser guns because they have no shields. They are being exterminated. Why? Because they killed Harkonnens. Was it Harkonnens they killed? Halleck asked. What do you mean? Haven't you heard that there may have been Sardaukar with the Harkonnens? More rumors, but a pogrom. That isn't like the Harkonnens. A pogrom is wasteful. I believe what I see with my own eyes, Tuek said. Make your choice, fighting man, me or the Fremen. I will promise you sanctuary and a chance to draw the blood we both want. Be sure of that. The Fremen will offer you only the life of the hunted. Halleck hesitated, sensing wisdom and sympathy in Tuek's words, yet troubled for no reason he could explain. Trust your own abilities, Tuek said. Whose decisions brought your force through the battle? Yours. Decide. It must be, Halleck said. The Duke and his son are dead. The Harkonnens believe it. Where such things are concerned, I incline to trust the Harkonnens. A grim smile touched Tuek's mouth. But it's about the only trust I give them. Then it must be, Halleck repeated. He held out his right hand, palm up and thumb folded flat against it in the traditional gesture. I'll give you my sword. Accepted. Do you wish me to persuade my men? You'd let them make their own decision? They've followed me this far. But most are Caladan-born. Arrakis isn't what they thought it'd be. Here they've lost everything except their lives. I prefer they decided for themselves now. Now is no time for you to falter, Tuek said. They've followed you this far. You need them. Is that it? We can always use experienced fighting men, in these times more than ever. You've accepted my sword. Do you wish me to persuade them? I think they'll follow you, Gurney Halleck. 'Tis to be hoped. Indeed. I may make my own decision in this thing. Your own decision. Halleck pushed himself up from the bucket seat, feeling how much of his reserve strength even that small effort required. But now, I'll see to their quarters and well-being, he said. Consult my quartermaster, Tuek said. Drisk is his name. Tell him it's my wish that you receive every courtesy. I'll join you myself presently. I've some off-shipments of spice to see to first. Fortune passes everywhere, Halleck said. Everywhere, Tuek said. A time of upset is a rare opportunity for our business. Halleck nodded, heard the faint susurration, and felt the air shift as a lockport swung open beside him. He turned, ducked through it, and out of the office. He found himself in the assembly hall through which he and his men had been led by Tuek's aides. It was a long, fairly narrow area, chewed out of the native rock, its smooth surface betraying the use of cut-ray burners for the job. The ceiling stretched away high enough to continue the natural supporting curve of the rock, and to permit internal air convection currents. Weapons racks and lockers lined the walls. Halleck noted with a touch of pride that those of his men still able to stand were standing, no relaxation in weariness and defeat for them. Smuggler medics were moving among them, tending the wounded. Litter cases were assembled in one area down to the left, each wounded man with an Atreides companion. The Atreides training. We care for our own. It held like a core of native rock in them, Halleck noted. One of his lieutenants stepped forward, carrying Halleck's 9-string balisette out of its case. The man snapped a salute, said, Sir, the medics here say there's no hope for Matai. They have no bone and organ banks here, only outpost medicine. Matai can't last, they say. And he has a request of you. What is it? The lieutenant thrust the balisette forward. Matai wants a song to ease his going, sir. He says you'll know the one. He's asked it of you often enough. The lieutenant swallowed. It's the one called My Woman, sir. If you... I know. Halleck took the balisette, flicked the multi-pick out of its catch on the fingerboard. He drew a soft chord from the instrument, found that someone had already tuned it. There was a burning in his eyes. but he drove that out of his thoughts as he strolled forward, strumming the tune, forcing himself to smile casually. Several of his men and a smuggler medic were bent over one of the litters. One of the men began singing softly as Halleck approached, catching the counter beat with the ease of long familiarity. My woman stands at her window, curved lines against square glass, upraised arms, bent, downfolded, against sunset red and golden. Come to me, warm arms of my lass, for me, the warm arms of my lass. The singer stopped, reached out a bandaged arm, and closed the eyelids of the man on the litter. Halleck drew a final soft chord from the balisette, thinking, now we are 73.
Family life of the Royal Creche is difficult for many people to understand, but I shall try to give you a capsule view of it. My father had only one real friend, I think. That was Count Casimir Fenring, the genetic eunuch, and one of the deadliest fighters in the Imperium. The Count, a dapper and ugly little man, brought a new slave concubine to my father one day, and I was dispatched by my mother to spy on the proceedings. All of us spied on my father as a matter of self-protection. One of the slave concubines permitted my father, under the Bene Gesserit Guild agreement, could not, of course, bear a royal successor. But the intrigues were constant and oppressive in their similarity. We became adept, my mother and sisters and I, at avoiding subtle instruments of death. It may seem a dreadful thing to say, but I'm not at all sure my father was innocent in all these attempts. A royal family is not like other families. Here was a new slave concubine, then, red-haired like my father, willowy and graceful. She had a dancer's muscles, and her training obviously had included neuro-enticements. My father looked at her for a long time as she postured unclothed before him. Finally, he said, "She is too beautiful. We will save her as a gift. You have no idea how..."
All right, Yvonne. I'm gonna call Interest Life tonight. I want to thank you for stopping by, and everyone keeps stopping by. Excuse me. I appreciate all y'all's support. Until next time, everyone. Y'all stay safe out there.